Good morning, everybody. My name's Steve. I work with the sales team at PermiServ, and I just wanted to welcome you to our webinar today. We would like to thank you all for joining us this morning. Today is our first Better Waste Services live event of 2024, with our in-person event happening later this year in Birmingham. The aim of these events is to enable councils to share their knowledge and experience of running garden waste services. No matter the challenge you face, there's most likely another council out there that's experiencing similar issues, and potentially they already have a solution in place that could help you. Our hope is that you all take something away from today, including some new connections to bounce ideas off. We have a great lineup of speakers ready to share their experiences, so sit back, relax, and feel free to ask plenty of questions. I will now hand over to Amy from Raw, who will be looking after you this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Better Waste Services Garden Waste Online. Thanks very much to Steve. Just a few admin points first. For all audience members, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screens where you can ask questions throughout any point of the webinar. Each speaker will have their own Q&A after they present, so be sure to add your questions throughout the presentation to make sure we can get to them all at the end. I'd like to now introduce our first speaker of the day, Imogen Percy-Bell. If you could join me, Imogen from the Highland Council, who will be taking us through our first case study this morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Amy. And good morning, everybody, and thank you to the PermiServ team for inviting me to take part in this today. Can I just check everybody can hear me? Is that all right? I take it, Amy, you'll tell me if I need to do anything differently. Okay, so my name's Imogen. I am a Principal Waste Management Officer for the Highland Council, and I will take you through our garden waste service. So hold on. Why is that not going forwards? There we go. Okay, bit of background for to begin with, which I think might be helpful. So the Highland Council is a large geographical area, as can be seen by the blue shaded area on this map of Scotland. Haven't quite got all of Scotland in there, so forgive me about that. It covers about a third of the landmass of Scotland and is equivalent to the size of Belgium. We've got a population of 240,000 people with approximately 130,000 households. We have a residual waste service. It's alternate weekly collections. We're on 240 litre bins at the moment, with 240 litre blue bins for dry mixed recyclables collected alternate weekly with the refuse. We provide the garden waste service is offered to approximately 70,000 households, and so we offer the service up here, up in the very north of the country to Wick and Thurso. We also is predominantly down here in the Inverness, Nairn, Easter Ross area. We also deliver the service down in Loch Harbour and in Badenoch and Strathspey. We nearly cover all of Badenoch and Strathspey. For those of you thinking, where is that? That's the Cairngorms. So we've tried to deliver the service to those more densely populated areas of Highland. And when we rolled out the service in 2005, when we originally provided that garden waste service, we kept the service to within the 30-mile-an-hour limits. We also deliver a business waste collection service to 6,000 business waste customers across the Highland region. We have 21 recycling centres, and we have 200 recycling points. So that's a bit of background on Highland. So next slide. This slide's about our annual permit sales. So we introduced the charging in 2017, and the cost of a permit at that point was £30. I do remember that we got notification that we would be needing to apply a charge. So that notification came through to us at the end of February, and from the beginning of January, we applied the charge. So as all of you who already deliver that service and that change, will appreciate, I'm sure you all had to go through it, that big shift in how are we going to do this. So we sold around just shy of 30,000 permits in our first year, with about 8,000 tons of garden waste being collected at the curbside. And you can see that we've got about 6,000 going through the recycling centres. I should say, before we introduced the charge, we were collecting about 12,000 tons of garden waste at the curbside. So we did see a shift. We then, in the following year, because it was doing so well, it was decided to put another £5 on the price of a permit. And that's okay, because we continue to increase the number of permit sales. And overall, we maintained the tonnage. We actually increased the tonnage going through the curbside collections there and reduced it going through the recycling centres. Following year, another £5 was added to the price of a permit, and we are starting to see a drop off in the number of permit sales that we are making. However, and we're seeing a shift there from the curbside tonnage through over to the household waste recycling centre tonnage. And yet again, following year, put another £5 on it. We're seeing that reduction in the number of permits. However, what we're not seeing at that stage is a reduction in the income. So, and I'm sure all of you will be aware of those dilemmas that we are faced. So in 2021-22. It was decided that we'd just put an inflationary increase on. However, we still saw a reduction in the price, in the number of sales of permits. We can start seeing the curbside collection tonnages going down. And then 22-23, another inflationary increase. Again, we're seeing a drop again. And we've maintained that same price this year. And we're not through, we haven't finished our permit sales for this year yet. However, there's still another 1,500 to sell, and we do not think this will be achievable in this period. What I should say at this point is we do know we carried out a waste composition analysis in November 22 on what's in our residual bins, and we found that 5% of it was garden waste. That equates to about 2,600 tons. So so there's work to do there. We also know that's given us about a 75% capture rate on our garden waste, which is quite good, actually, considering that it's not, considering how many people are taking part in the service. What I should say here now, I think, is that starting in April, we are introducing a service change across Highland. We will reduce the size of our residual bins to 180 litres collected fortnightly, where we do not provide food waste collections, and 140 litre residual bins where we do provide food waste bins. So, and we will also twin stream our recycling. So we will have a 240 litre bin, green bin for containers, mixed containers, and a 240 litre blue bin for fibres. So we're hoping that shift as well will, I guess at the moment, what we're seeing is that people do have the capacity within their 240 litre residual bin to dispose of their garden waste. So hopefully that reduction in the residual capacity will help that shift, and whether it drives permit sales or whether it increases the number of households that are home composting, or it drives more garden waste to recycling centres, we're not quite sure yet, but ideally it would be good if we can increase income from these changes. So next slide. So I just thought I'd give you a little overview of how our customers pay for our permits. Majority are using our online form, 79%. We still have 16% that are phoning our service centre, our call centre, and 5% are making that they're going into our service points across the region to make those payments. We do try to reduce the number of help our customer services teams by reducing the number of calls that are going through their service centre. They're under a lot of pressure, difficult to get staff, long call times, wait times. However, we don't seem to be able to shift those calls away from them. There still is that demand to make that call and have that conversation with a trusted member of staff to make your garden waste payment. It's probably down to our demographics as well here in Highland. So as I said, we offer a fortnightly collection to about 70,000 properties, and about 26,000 take the service at the moment. Our permit season is from the 1st of September to the 31st of August. We have an annual renewal process, which starts in May, runs through to July and August. And I'll take you through that in a moment. We stop our service from December until March because of where we are in the country. It's pretty cold up here in the winter. There isn't much growing, so therefore we're not collecting much garden waste. I can't quite remember when we stopped doing that, but yeah, that's okay. So that's makes our service more efficient. Okay, our annual renewal process. It starts with us downloading a CSV file from the PermiServ's garden waste portal. Really easy process to use. We download our customer data, and then we combine that with our payment data that we've received from our ICT team. And the reason we do that is because we want to send email reminders and letter reminders to our customers. So we send, obviously 80%, majority are getting an email reminder because we have their email address. Where we don't have their email address, we're sending letters out. We send them out over a 6-week period. We try and get those emails to land at night to avoid that hit to our customer services. And we program the letters to land on days or weeks when customer services aren't under pressure, because we know the people who are getting the letters, they're the ones predominantly going through the service centre. So the residents have their letters, they then go online. We have Granicus up here in Highland that processes the online request for permits, and the customer services are using Case Viewer to process the requests as well. Once we've received that, we then, my team, Claire is on the call, they run reports from our Highland Council systems, and we upload those twice weekly to the PermiServ garden waste portal. And then miraculously, the permits and welcome packs are printed, packed and dispatched to customers within 15 days. Brilliant service that we receive here in Highland. Very few issues with any complaints on customers not getting their permits. It's a slick, professional service, which is brilliant. So in addition to customers getting that letter and that email to remind them, we do have a communications campaign around that as well. Here's an example of that. We're still using newspaper advertising to reach the wide demographic here in Highland. This is an example of our bin permit sticker, which gets posted out. We're also using social media to support our campaign to encourage people to use the garden waste permit service. Here's an example of our branded envelope, which is what you receive when you get your welcome pack, when you purchase your permit. very clear, it's important information. It's not junk mail from the Highland Council. And I think what I should say about the renewal process before I go on, though, is at the beginning of it, it was enormous. It was new to everybody. It was new to ICT. You know, they're getting 30,000 hits through an online form, which had never had 30,000 hits before. It went down. We had severe problems. They have resolved all of that. You know, not only was that huge, but the workload for my team processing it all our side, and so I would say now this is now a business as usual process that we do, and we can deliver the renewals alongside other campaigns. It's not, it used to be we cannot do anything else, but now we will be running our renewal process alongside our service change and alongside our business waste renewals as well. So I think it's the service that we get from PermiServ, and it's also combined with the improvements that have been made from our Highland Council systems, and that has made those improvements. Something else we've started looking at this year is on the garden waste portal is the street finder function. I haven't done a very good screenshot of this, so apologies. I tried to get everything in, but I couldn't get it. So this is something we wanted to start using, and we worked with PermiServ on this one for us to help us provide crew sheets, run sheets like we have for our business waste customers. We wanted to know where are our customers for garden waste, so we can easily select the route, what week of the route on, what day, and that generates us a run sheet. And here's an example of our run sheet. Some of you are probably using this, but I thought it was worthwhile pointing out if you're not, because we've put this in route order to help the crews, and particularly when they've got new staff. And it shows us where we have the permits and where we don't have the permits. So we know, for example, that Stratherick Park, there are no permits purchased on that road. So unless the operations crew need to drive down that street to get to another one, they don't need to go there. So this is all about us trying to be more efficient with our collections. We also can see that, for example, Rosedene Court, the crew know I'm only looking for one bin, and then we can move on and move out of that street. So that's been really helpful, and we will be rolling that out further to our crews later on this year for this permit season. And then future plans. I guess it's all about maximizing income, as lots of you will be aware, and it's how do we do that, and what's not working at the minute. So we would like to introduce automated online direct debits. We think that the fact that customers have to actively make that payment every year in order to renew their permit is a barrier. Some people may forget, and then they run a few weeks without the service and go, do you know what, it's okay, I don't need it. So we think if you have that online, that annual renewal with your direct debit, you're not having to do anything. That will reduce the number of customers that we are losing. We believe it offers a secure and guaranteed payment method for customers, and that might be good for those that are going through the service centre, and that they're familiar with setting up a direct debit, and so that we think that demographic would be the ones that would be happy to take on those direct debits. It would reduce our administration time to process the renewals. and it complies with audit and financial regulations, and it's a cheaper form of payment for the method for the council compared to online and telephone payments. There was something else I was going to say about online direct debits. We don't, apart from council tax, we don't have online direct debits here in the Highland Council at the moment. We have everything's on paper. So I think we will be one of the first services that introduces that. We are looking to introduce that in 2025, because we've got our service change being introduced next year. One final point is that where we have expanded the service, the garden waste service, we have had a really poor uptake. So originally we had about 67,000 households provided the service from 2005. We've had requests to introduce the service to other towns. For example, we've got a town, reasonably 1,000 properties within a town. We've only got 100 householders taking up the service. Where we expanded the service last year to 3,000 properties, and we've got a lot of housing growth in Inverness, and we are not seeing high take up. We're seeing very low take up, especially from these new developments, because these new homes are they don't have big gardens, and they haven't got established gardens, so there's no need for a garden waste service. Just thought that might be useful for some local authorities. So I think that's it from me. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Imogen. We do have some questions come in. So first question I have is from Scott Ferguson, who says, hello, do you think the reductions most recently are due to the cost of living? Are people using residual waste bins, visiting recycling points, HWRCs, or fly tipping instead?
I think it's definitely a cost of living. It's a combination for us. I think we've put the price up as well, and we're definitely seeing. We don't see a lot of fly tipping here in Highland. It is a combination of the cost of living crisis. We have to keep putting the prices up, and there are alternative options, and because of the size of the bin. So hopefully when we introduce that smaller residual bin, that should hopefully improve the permit sales.
Fantastic. Next one is from Barry Elder. How will you go about extending the garden waste service to the 60k or so households not currently offered a garden waste collection?
We won't. Simply, we will not. Because as I don't know, perhaps that question was asked before I talked about the expansion. We know from the expansion of the service, 3,000 last year, 1,000 the year before, it doesn't work. It's not cost effective for us. So we will have to justify that. Our members are very keen to all have the service, but we will justify it that it's not environmentally or financially viable for us to expand the service.
Perfect, thank you. Sophie Rose asked, do you mix food waste in with garden waste?
No, good question. I should have covered that. No, our garden waste is processed separately because of the large volume of garden waste, and so that's still composted open windrow. And then our food waste is sent away separately to AD. So if we were to combine them or both, the price would be significantly increased. So we separate the two.
Fantastic. We have a question from Ocean. Can you give some more information about when your 6-week period is scheduled? Does it run in the 6 weeks prior to the new year starting?
Yeah. So we start sending out emails and letters the beginning of May. So that takes us to the middle of, that's May, middle of June. It may be, sorry, middle of May to the middle of June. Then they've got until, I think our cutoff period is until the end of July. So we have built in quite a bit of space there for people for that last minute rush. And it does tend to take us right up to people. It is that last minute thing. So yeah.
The people really push it to the end.
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
point,
it's human nature, isn't it? That's why if we can get that automated direct debit renewal, it will reduce all of that. We believe, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And AD Selby asks, hi Imogen, I'm interested if you or indeed anyone else on the call has considered alternative to welcome packs and bin stickers, given increased printing and postage costs, RFID chips in bins, for example.
We haven't considered anything at this stage. We think it's just part of the cost of providing a service that is, you know, the permits are really important to us, for this crew to identify. We haven't got the technology for chips at the moment in bins, but who knows in the future.
Fantastic. And then on that technology kind of question you just mentioned, do you have an in-cab system in your collection vehicles?
No, we do not. We have, we're exploring that with Routeware. We have route optimization software, and we've used that to optimize our garden waste routes, but we don't have in-cab at the moment.
And then next one. If a resident does not renew their subscription, do they keep their bin or do you remove them from Samgar side?
Yeah, they keep the bin. They can ask us to take it away, but I don't think we get many taken away. So yeah, those bins are still out there.
Right, yes.
We haven't got it'd be lovely to take those away, but we haven't got the resources to be onto that.
Okay, thank you. And Jade Green asked, for the direct debit option in the Highlands, is this an annual payment or monthly payment? Just thinking about debt recovery admin if it's monthly.
Yeah, it would definitely be an annual payment because of the value of it for sure, and the administration. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then Barry Elder again, prior to introducing charging, did you collect from households and how did you manage the transition?
Yeah, so we introduced originally our garden waste service in 2005 in Highland to about 67,000 households, and then the charging took place. It was introduced in 2017, and yeah, how did we manage that transition? We had February, March, April, May, June. We had 5 months to manage that transition, and it was very intense with working with our customer services teams, our business support, our ICT teams. You know, it was one of the biggest projects that the council was doing that year. Yeah, a lot of work, big project.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
And then Dottie Allen asked, do you have options for extra guard waste capacity for those who want it?
Yeah, we do. We allow up to 3 garden waste bins per household. And ideally, I don't know why we've limited 3. I think we were at that point where we had a limit of whether we could collect all of that garden waste on our vehicles without overloading. I think those days are gone. We should probably review how many bins a householder can have. And I think we should also look at introducing, if you have 1 or more, let's give them a reduction in the cost of a permit. Unfortunately, we have not been in a position to introduce that, but I would like to.
Yeah, fantastic. And kind of on that, do you receive many complaints about paid for garden waste service, or if you do, are there any themes to those complaints that you see regularly come up?
I think when we did introduce that charge initially in 2017, we did get hit with a lot of complaints. We justified it. It's not a statutory service, and the alternatives are we take the service away entirely. So the themes, I think for sure it doesn't happen anymore. It definitely was a thing, and that we were. But then you look at it and go, well, if I live on Skye, or I don't have the service where I live, so it's not like it's a universal service. So yeah, we just had to hold our line with that one.
Someone again asked about do you have the in-cab systems, or do they look for stickered bins? And they kind of asked the question, do you get many presenting on the chance it will be collected?
They're looking for those sticker bins. They've got their run sheets, the crews. I think when we go through that transition from the annual renewal period, there are bins that are out, but we have little stickers that PermiServ produce for us, that the collection crew put on the bin, say, unfortunately, you do not have a permit, we cannot lift this bin, and that then drives them to purchase their permits. And we have those situations where maybe older people, they forget and all of that, so we're not too hard on people, but yeah, we have to hold the line and say we won't collect unless you got a permit.
Fair enough. And then so Carolyn Harley asks, how do you deal with garden waste in residual bins? Do you take action with the crews who report that?
No, we don't. We haven't got the time or the capacity.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is introducing the smaller bins from April, so that should reduce the percentage of garden waste in those bins.
Perfect. And then got a question of John Keeler asks, have you asked residents why they haven't renewed their subscription?
No, we haven't, and that's a really good thing. Ideally, we would like to do that, and we'd like to use the data that we have better. Unfortunately, we just never have the capacity to do it. But yeah, absolutely agree. That would be a great thing to do.
And then we have a question from Simon. Do you advertise any comms on how to use the bin as a composter to help stop green waste that's been displaced into general waste or any other waste containers for the residents who don't subscribe? Would you refuse to empty green waste bins if they were filled with green waste classed as contamination?
Quite a lot in that one.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I think the first thing is, if there's a contaminated bin, we'll not lift it. We've got a contamination process. We do promote home composting. We have had to do that as part of our communications, because we were, the members were keen that we didn't just keep pushing the garden waste service. So we are making sure that that householders are aware what can go in what bin and where it can go. And again, with our service change, we've got a 16-page booklet that will be being delivered with their bins. Again, another opportunity to remind folk about what to do with garden waste.
Fantastic. And then I've got two just questions on kind of benefits. Do you offer any discounts with household benefits? And then Jessica Burgess says they had a lot of complaints about non-concessions. So non-concession for residents on benefits. Do you receive complaints around that?
I think we did initially, but we said initially it was £30, so it was like, this is a cheap service for the cost of for the whole year. But no, we've not reviewed that. I think we would struggle to administer that. That is the main reason. We would just get caught up in knots, and it would cost us even more to deliver the service.
Fantastic. And then just a few more. We've just got about a minute left. So do you in your T's and C's, do you commit to a minimum number of collections for a year?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what the number of collections is. Bear with me, sorry.
Yeah.
But T's and C's, we will, if we miss a collection, we're going to come back. If there's adverse weather, we're coming back. You know, during COVID, we all had that difficulty, didn't we? We couldn't go out. We withdrew our garden waste service during COVID for the first, I don't know, 6 weeks. So what we did was we extended the permit season in that year, and that's why we're at our permit season where we are. So yeah, we will deliver what we say on our T's and C's.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Imogen. That was 23 questions, pretty quick fire, and there was still more coming in. But thank you so much. That was really interesting. And yeah, fantastic to have you here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And we'll move on to our next speaker now. We have Gillian Bainey from East Renfrewshire Council, and Gillian started working with the council in 1997, working with the various departments sections over the years. Gillian was appointed her current role as business manager with neighbourhood services in service section in 2018. Fantastic. Gillian's live, and I'll hand over to you now. Thanks.
Hi, thank you. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Gillian Blaney and I am the business manager. I have been working with East Renfrewshire Council, like Amy said, for some time now, and thanks for asking me on today just to talk about our implementation of the brown bin charging scheme. We are really looking at the sort of best practice today for this, so I thought it'd be good just to go over an overview of East Renfrewshire Council, currently what we offer, what we've got. So we've got 2 household waste recycling centres within our district for the public obviously to use. We do offer a chargeable special uplift service as well for the public. Now currently we charge £51.85 for that. And that's based on sort of 15 minutes work, 2 men basically uplifting waste within that. Our current frequency for the brown bin is weekly. And the reason for that is because we collect garden and food waste together. We do that for 50 collections. The only weeks we don't uplift is Christmas and New Year week, just due to the volume of like grey bin waste, etc., and other recyclates. So we do offer that. It's not seasonal, you know, it is offered all year round. 2022 recycling rate was 56%. So we do try and push to get a high standard of recycling within the council. Currently within East Renfrewshire Council, we have got 40,664 households. That is increasing due to new builds, etc., consistently coming into us through the sort of planning section, so that is increasing annually as well. So I thought it'd probably be good to start with our timeline and when we started to look at introducing the chargeable garden waste. So this was first introduced 21-22 season, and we basically, as other councils, really had to start looking at savings and possible, you know, increase in revenue and income, just with the restraints that we had within the budgets. We went out June 2021, and that was basically because it was quite a fast-paced moving project. It was agreed that, right, this is what we're going to do, and we really didn't have a lot of time to try and pull this together and implement it. With our financial meetings in relation to the budget strategy group, etc., a lot of these fall within a timeline of, you know, January, February, March. So we had to push back slightly the first year, and that was due to just getting approval for costings and charging for services. And what I would say that first year is, regardless of when it started, we charged for the annual fee. And it didn't matter when you came onto the scheme, you get charged the annual fee from that month. The first year it ran to the end of March as well. So it wasn't the full 12 months, but up to the point of us implementing it, people were still getting their bins uplifted, which we felt was then no issue for any complaints coming in. So permit costs, we initially started 21-22 at £40. And because it was sort of mid-season as well, or mid-year, we decided not to increase at all. the following year. So 22-23, we stuck to the £40 mark. We felt that that was more beneficial not to look at getting any more complaints in, or people feeling that it wasn't appropriate just due to the fact that they never got the service until the June. So we thought, right, it's a new system that we've implemented, new charge, so we'll keep it as is. 23-24 currently, we increased it to the £50 mark. We did see a slight sort of drop in uptake initially, but I think we started to see more people come on, and again we are increasing in households as well, so that would also increase that. We introduced additional permits, so just to explain, we only offered one brown bin per household initially, and the reason we done that was because some households within our district had maybe 5-6 bins, and operationally it was becoming impossible for them to shut down routes with the tonnage increase, etc. So we restricted to one brown bin per household. But on this year, we decided to offer out a sort of cap up to so many households for an additional bin. So that would have been another £50 on top of that. And if you didn't have an additional brown bin, which was very unlikely because a lot of people within the district already had maybe more than one bin, but they only would put one out for collection, there would be a surcharge for £60, and that would get you your sticker, and that would also get you your bin delivered out. We moved our permit season as well, so 23-24 we were having a lot of discussions because we were looking to increase it slightly higher. There was a lot of kickback from members and councillors, and it was up for discussion at possibly all the members' meetings, the CMT's cabinets, charging for services. So we had to push back to May, and we felt as though that made more sense because a lot of our financial meetings were running February, March, so it wasn't really giving us much time to go out for renewals. So we decided to push it back to May and just run it May to the end of April rather than the end of March. And then that was giving us time to get it all approved at charging for services and giving us time to go out to the public in relation to this. One thing we did offer from the start was, over the Christmas period, was a Christmas tree uplift. Now, because we were commingled garden food waste, what we done was anyone who had a permit could put the Christmas tree within the bin and we would uplift it. Anyone who didn't have a permit and were only using the bin for food waste, we offered a one-off uplift of £15 to collect your Christmas tree. So that was just to give them the residents an option, in another service if they wanted it. But if they didn't want to pay, we also provided a free chipping service where the trees were taken to one of the parks, and our employees would do a free chipping service and the residents would just leave the trees for us to deal with. So it was another option for them, free of charge. And again, they could take it to the household recycling centres as well. Sign-up figures for year one. So at the start, we predicted 25,000 households to uptake, which was just basically around about 50 or just under the sort of 50% mark. So year one, we got 21,716. Year two, 23,219, and year three, 22,318. And all the permits, like I said, have to go through our charging for services review annually for us to agree on that. So I think the initial setup, like I said, was quite a quick process. We were looking to get this implemented as soon as possible. So initially we had to set up, I was looking at internal sort of focus groups within the council, who was going to need to be in these focus groups. For example, our in-house team, we had to look at customer services, we had to look at our digital, IT, our communications, we had to reach out to members, etc. So there was quite a lot of work and communication in the sort of initial stages of setup. It obviously has to all go through cabinet council approval as well, prior to that. So council engagement was massive to make sure they knew why we were doing this, to make sure everyone was on board and understanding what we were looking to do. I think we obviously had to look at our systems, etc. we had in place. One of our challenges where we had to look at was our auctions appraisals. Our council was very keen to try and keep our in-house systems and what we can use, but Unfortunately, they aren't always fit for purpose. So we went through quite a large fit for purpose exercise and options appraisal where it came out where we had to really go external and to look for a system that was going to, do take the information in, obviously issue out permits and things like that for us. We didn't have the resource to do that in-house at all. So basically, we started reaching out to other councils. I spoke to a few Scottish councils actually who were very helpful in what they faced and what their challenges were, obviously offering slightly different service to us, but it was also good, to get that knowledge from them, which is why I think these seminars are very good as well, because it gives you an understanding of what other people are going through, trying to set these sort of things up. Like I say, council engagement was crucial. We had to make sure that they were on board, they understood why we were doing this. We had to start looking at contracts, looking at what contracts we were going to be looking in. We had various discussions with PermiServ, which were excellent. I can't thank them enough in relation to how smooth the process was with them. We initially, because it was quite a fast-paced moving project, done a direct award, and that went out to PermiServ. Everything from their side was excellent. We really couldn't fault them. Our major challenges really just came from our side of things in relation to trying to get the back office digital set up. So we started getting demos. We already had a contract in place for our council tax etc. going out to the public. So we got a list from our council tax in relation to the most up-to-date street list for East Yorkshire Council, and we worked with CFH in Royal Mail, and we decided to do a letter drop to every single household to tell them about the new scheme that was coming into place. We also offered the letter and leaflet. The leaflet was broken down just to give them as much information as possible on that as well. So once we started looking at that, we obviously awarded the contracts. We got moving with the letter drop and things so we could get out to the public to get that started, and we pushed for an online scheme. We would try to push as many people online, so any registrations are done online and payments made online as well. So once we agreed our focus group, it meant we could just start really pushing and working hard to get it implemented in time, which we did. It was a lot of hard work, but we did get there. One thing I would say, which we found a massive help, was our robust FAQs that we put in place. Now, that was a live document, probably still is a live document now, but we managed to, I think, answer most questions any of the public would have, and they would just refer to our FAQs online, and that really provided them with possibly every answer that you needed, and we found that a massive, massive help. It deterred a lot of phone calls and complaints coming in because it was there for people to look at, and it really tried to stop that, the phone calls increasing, which we were trying to stay away from our customer services section, and we tried to keep as much online approach so we could prevent that happening. So challenges we faced was, obviously we initially were bringing it in due to budget constraints, and we really had to look at an income generator because our garden waste is non-statutory service. We felt that was an appropriate place to start. Now our challenge was we are commingled, so with it being mixed, we really had to think about how we were operationally going to offer this service out. One of the things I would say is we had great discussions with PermiServ, obviously in-house with our operations teams, etc. as well. But we decided that we were going to send out the sort of label sticker to the public, and it would be checked by our operations team, and only those with the permit would have the garden waste lifted. So we really had to think about all these processes in the background and how it's going to impact us due to us having the commingled bin, with the waste in that. So that was a bit of a challenge, just like how we're going to manage this, etc. So we had to really think of that. I would say from speaking to the other councils and actually from our experience, everyone said the same thing. The digital element was the massive challenge. It was really looking at how we integrate, how we get payments set up, how we have the payment system set up in the background, how we make sure that it's reconciliating properly for audit purposes. So that was a massive challenge, and is actually sometimes still a challenge to this day, because with the high number hitting the website all at once, the initial year particularly, we found there was a lot of duplicate payments, or we were getting information through and no payment. So we had to really start looking at that, trying to work with our digital teams and making sure that that was reduced massively, because the back office work was increased, which is what we were trying to get away from in the first place. So yeah, that's definitely something that if anyone was looking to do, I would say you need to make sure your digital element and everything in the background is ready to go, because that will be the most time consuming thing for you. Interacting with the current council systems project. So we spoke with customer services quite a lot through this period, because what we didn't want to do was go out with council tax reminders. We didn't want it to be a negative, going out with a council tax reminder, oh, and you're charging for garden waste. So we decided to go out prior to that to make sure we were out with information. It was an opt-in scheme, so we tried to put a positive spin on it. It's an opt-in. If you don't want to purchase the permit, that's fine. You can still use your brown bin for food waste. If you don't want, to get the permit, you have got the household waste recycling centres to do that also, and giving them other options to do so. So it was really making sure that when we were interacting, we were sending things out, we were doing it on the timeline to suit other council areas as well. The other challenge we were concerned about was obviously increased our contact centre, our customer service centre. They were obviously quite busy. There was also a lot of other renewals and things going on at the same time. So we had to work in conjunction with them, which is why we pushed as much of it online as possible. When we went online, I think we were quite successful. Most people were going online, so we did try and defer as many calls. But what I would say is we set up an in-house system where we had, when somebody phoned customer services, you would just press the button for garden waste, and we had a small team within the back office taking the initial calls. That was really to give the residents a better service. It was more efficient. They were coming direct to us and they were getting an answer immediately. Obviously, customer services would do their best, but they weren't really dealing with the project day to day. So we felt doing that was a better way of dealing with the public's queries or complaints at the time. Basically, when we done that with the staffing and the setup, I should have said we looked at what we would require. We had a senior member of staff and we had an assistant. So that was 2 members of staff we brought in to try and assist. I led on the project, but we had to bring in staff for the back office to do all the day-to-day, which they done an excellent job, and we found that the 2 were fine for the numbers that we had coming in. We really had to think of the forecasting. So initial sign up, we did go with 25,000 households. It's really difficult to try and anticipate how many people are going to sign up. You just don't know. So the challenge in that sense was how many are we going to get? We had to put that to cabinet. We got approval, and that income's then expected back in. And like I said, adequate staffing and resource, you need to make sure you've got that there to deal with any queries. First year particularly, you are going to get a massive backlash, or you're going to get a lot of questions, queries, people not sure what to do in certain situations. So I think just making sure that we got that right was really important. Expected increase in complaints, we did expect that, I have to say, but I don't think we received as many as what we anticipated. We have a customer relations service or section within our department who deal generally with all our sort of complaints, and we set up a lot of standard responses, because a lot of it was just not happy with paying. Some of it was, why are we getting charged for this? So it's really just explaining, it's a non-statutory service, it's opt-in, just to give that. So that helped, just making sure you've got all the responses up to date as best you can to deal with that when that comes in. We also, I think we spoke about this, possibly there was a question on this from the previous presentation, but we were asked on concessions and we were asked on financial hardship. So the first year, which we were a wee bit nervous about, I'm not going to lie, was building an instalment process for vulnerable residents with financial difficulties. We offered that, and I was quite reluctant because the back office system that we had in place for it was not very efficient, and it was going to cause a lot more work, which is what we were trying to get away from. We were trying to have it quite digital and moving quite smoothly in relation to the portal that PermiServ had offered us, etc. So we had this in the background. Luckily, we didn't have a massive uptake for this, but it was probably quite good to see that we were offering it. We offered that over 4 instalments, and we would have to check that monthly for any date. If 1 month wasn't paid, we would need to put a stop on uplifting the bins. And then what we would do is just go onto the resident and say, obviously the debt's there for the uplift. And so it was a wee bit more work in the back office, but like I say, luckily we didn't have a massive uptake. Otherwise it could possibly have been quite unmanageable. I've touched on before, the other challenge was the budget approval process. Now, I think probably with most councils, you probably all know yourselves that it does impact you because of when it falls. So when you're trying to implement things like this and, the meetings and decisions aren't going to be made till maybe February, March time, it's not giving you a lot of time to try and get out and do this. So we do try and make sure that we've got everything in. We try and get an answer as much as possible. Like I say, there was 1 year where we were going above inflation, which caused, more of an issue, which is why we then had to push back. And that's why we've had to put back to May now. So that was a bit of a challenge, and probably for other people to think about as well within your financial year, when these decisions are being made and when you're going to start going out to the public to make sure they've got enough time to register and to get the permit on the bin for their uplifts. Opportunities, obviously, we know massively it was income generation. That's one of the main reasons we had to, just with the budget constraints that we're all facing just now. Another thing was protection of the frontline service. Because it was non-statutory for garden waste, there was discussions on removing the service altogether. And rather than doing that, we felt better to protect that service, but to put it out at a charge, but also give people the other options of taking it to our household waste recycling centres, or, like I say, the tree service that we offer. So we were trying to give as many options within the FAQs as possible for that. The other thing that we did put out was we tried to get more information out there on home composting, and other areas where you can link in for home composting in your garden. So we gave a wee bit more information out in that for people who may have wanted to take that route for disposing of their waste. I think it was very important that we managed to provide the alternatives and make it very clear it was opt-in, because I think that prevented possibly a lot of complaints because it wasn't mandatory. It was a case of, if you want to opt in, that's great. If not, you can do X, Y, Z. And I think that allowed the public to say, right, that's fine, if I've got other options there. Like I said, the home composting advice was there. We managed to increase information on that. I don't think, not that I know of, I don't know if anybody took that on board or started looking at that rather than opting into the scheme. We managed to improve social media and website information around our services and what alternatives there were. So we worked really hard to make sure all our comms was there. We went out on, Facebook, Twitter accounts, our websites. We tried to obviously do the letter drop, etc. So we did try and improve our communications as much as possible, and we still do that to this day. So I think that was, quite a good opportunity for us to make sure that we were going to be providing and updating our websites a lot more than probably what we would have been before. So that's just an example of our letter and leaflets that went out. We tried to put as much information as we could on it, but not too much so people didn't get fed up reading it. So that was the sort of templates we used for that, just to give an idea. And similar to the permit that was presented before, that's what we look at, and we just change the colour each year. Just so it's identifiable for our ops team when they're visiting the streets to uplift the bins. So that's me, and I'm happy to answer any questions from anyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gillian. That was really interesting. We had a question come in from Sophie Rose, who asked, do you provide food waste for those that don't pay for the garden waste service?
Yes, we do. So this was one of the challenges we faced because it's a 240 litre bin. Food waste, as you know, is a very minimal part of the waste that's going in that bin. But yes, we decided because it was commingled, we would, if the permit's not on the bin, our crews check that it's just food waste that's in it, and they would still uplift that for the resident.
Fantastic. And John Keeler asks, in what percentage take up does your figures represent, please?
The percentage take up for our residents who have applied for the permit?
It doesn't give any more information than that, but I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we worked out it was maybe around about the 47% mark. So we're always slightly under the 50%. And I think speaking with other councils, there was always that similar uptake. We obviously had to guess at the start and thought, right, we'll go with 25,000. We weren't far off it. But yeah, I would say probably about the 45 to 47% uptake.
Fantastic. And then Jenny Grant asked, do you notice an improvement in quality of material / absence of contamination when moving from free to charged collections?
No, we never actually. We anticipated possible contamination because we thought people might just start flinging everything, black bags, within the brown bin, but we haven't seen a massive increase in contamination. I think like other councils, we have got certain routes, etc., where we maybe see a higher level of contamination, but with the introduction of the charges, we never noticed an increase in that.
Perfect. And again, from Jenny follows up and says, do you tell residents what happens to their garden waste?
Yeah, so it's funny, we're actually working on a few things just now. So we also offer a home composting type scheme. So within the contract that we've got for the brown bins, we do, part of our contract is how we can give back to the public. So with their waste going to our processor, we can offer like free composting. So we've done quite a lot for schools and community groups and things like that for them going out. So a lot of them are aware where it goes, what happens to it. And we are working to put a lot more information on our websites, etc. So people understand that, they're not doing it for no reason, that this is the process and this is what's happening with it.
Yeah, and that kind of answers John Keeler's question. He said, are you offering community composting schemes? And follow up, do you offer discounted home composters as part of that scheme? Or...
No, years ago we did, many years ago, we done a home composting scheme where we did offer out home composters and we gave the information to try and encourage it. No, but in this instance, what we done was we provided information on them and we gave people as much information on that for them to go and look at, possibly, having that installed at their own property.
Okay, fantastic. And then Dottie Allen asked, what happens if households that don't have garden waste or pay the one-off fee for Christmas trees end up leaving them out on the street? Do you enforce against dumped Christmas trees?
We don't have a massive enforcement. It's not actually something we struggle with. I'm not going to lie. We've not had a massive issue with that. We sometimes do, we have to say to people, put it in the brown bin, because prior to that, people were just maybe leaving them lying next to it. Again, due to the sort of festivities and that time of year, we try to be as lenient as possible. They will try and uplift what they can, but what we would say is, put it in the bin, we uplift it. If you don't pay the one-off fee, unfortunately, we can't lift it. But I have to say, I don't think we experienced a high volume of that. So I think we were maybe quite lucky.
Yeah, fantastic. And then we have a question of kind of weather. Do you have issues with frozen bins in the winter months, or does the food waste help avoid this? How do you deal with the frozen bins?
Yeah, so over the winter months, we do have some issues. Part of that issue is possibly the bin, that when the bin's been lifted, it falls into the back of the vehicle. So we do go through that quite a lot. We've actually looked at alternatives for bins and grippers, things on the vehicle as well to try and prevent that. But it's not very often it happens, but like you say, when it is frosty, etc., we have that issue. But I don't think the food waste, garden waste, etc., probably being commingled makes a massive difference. It's more how we're lifting it and what's happening, if the bin is actually falling into the back of the vehicle itself.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gillian. That's all the questions that have come through. A really thorough presentation there and really interesting. So thank you again so much for joining us. We go on to our next session now, who is, we invite Mark Garvey and Dave Patrick from Whitespace. This presentation will be hosted by the owner and CEO of Whitespace Work Software, Mark Garvey, and the head of product and compliance, Dave Patrick. Whitespace is the industry's leading provider of waste management software for local authorities. So I will pass over to Mark and Dave. Sorry, I'm just... There you go, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Just want to check, can everybody see me and hear me okay?
Yeah,
great, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'd quickly like to start by thanking PermiServ and Let's Recycle for the opportunity to talk to you today, and thanks to Imogen and Gillian. Hopefully you can still hear me. Yes, hopefully you can still hear me. So as Amy said, you're joined by myself, Mark Garvey. I'm the Chief Exec of Whitespace Work Software, and my colleague Dave Patrick, who is our Head of Product and Compliance. And to get us started, it's probably a good idea to tell you a bit about Whitespace for those of you that might not know who we are. We're then going to move on to talking about the challenges that many of our clients face in the delivery of their garden waste service, and lastly, talk through some of the advantages of using a system like ours to focus on the collection of garden waste and using in-cab technology. A bit about Whitespace. We currently support over 120 councils in the UK with our waste and environmental software. Specifically, we help them with the day-to-day operations of managing their services. And we handle a variety of those, from municipal collection, commercial waste collection, street cleansing, neighbourhoods, and so on. And of course, running a garden waste service. We're a privately owned, family-run business. We've been in the market since 2005, and we work alongside councils of all setups, shapes, and sizes, whether that be directly working with a local authority, working alongside a contractor, a large outsourced IT provider like PermiServ, for example, or working with local authorities where they've set up a LATCO. So whatever setup you've got, we've worked alongside you. And I'm very conscious of avoiding in the next 15 minutes or so this turning into a sales pitch for Whitespace's technology. So prior to today's meeting, we polled a selection of our customers to find out their opinion on the challenges that they faced in their delivery of the garden waste service, both before implementing in-cab and after. And secondly, the advantages that they find in having a system in place like ours. And to go through what we found from those clients and an overview of what in-cab technology can look like and the benefits of it, I'd like to hand you over to my colleague, Dave Patrick.
Thank you, Mark. Can we have the next slide then, Mark? So, yes, as well as relaying some of the feedback from our customers, as Mark described, we'll talk a little bit about our experience of supporting the configuration and operation of garden waste using our IT system. And with, as Mark says, more than 120 customers, we are quite familiar with running garden waste operations through our system. It's day-to-day business for us. So I'll talk about some of the challenges here. The first one I'll pick up is resident behaviour. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, garden waste has the potential to generate more resident interaction than running other collection services because of the need for initial subscription, renewals, reporting damage to bins, checking collection dates, but also in the payment system, in the payments process, the potential for interaction relating to discounts you may offer for benefits claimants and how you're going to manage that. So yes, the potential for increasing communications should focus the mind on the importance of shifting to online behaviour as much as possible, an online transaction. And it's worth thinking about all of the touch points for online transactions from the start so that you can drive as much resident interaction as possible through online. And as Imogen said earlier, 79% online, that's a good proportion of interactions. And I'm sure she'd like some of those 16% or 5% who are on the 16% on phone or 5% who are making visits to do more online transaction. It's never going to be 100%, but as much as possible will alleviate the pressure on your customer contact teams. Weather has obviously an impact on the volume and weight of garden waste that's produced and needs to be collected. And one of the benefits of using the IT system is that you can monitor patterns in collection volume, collection weight, and vary the number of crews that you allocate to garden waste collections, with the potential during the hot, dry periods or the quieter winter months of reducing your crew volumes and deploying that resource elsewhere. But having the data to inform that behaviour, and having the back-end system capable of reallocation and moving crews around will help with that process. To talk a little bit about bin damage, surprisingly, quite a lot of our customers report that green bins are the most damage of all of the bins they provide. Not sure I fully understand that, and I don't know what your experience is, but again, thinking about the online behaviours that need to be supported, providing both crews and residents with the facilities to report damaged bins, so that phone calls don't need to be made, and making arrangements for bin replacements can be as automated as possible will help address that issue. Point 4 really is about thinking about the system design from the outset and working with your IT provider. All IT systems will have their sweet spots, and whilst most will be highly configurable, you could well find that your ambitions for the type of garden waste service you want to offer aren't fully supported by your IT system. Now, with over 100 customers, we're proud of the degree of configurability that we're able to offer, but still there are challenges, because it's entirely likely that there isn't just one IT system involved in this in support of this operation, as well as your CRM, your resident interaction. You'll have your back-end system, the in-cab system, but also the payment system. And for example, I'm aware that not all payment providers will support multi-year end-of-year renewals automatically. Direct debits, yes, or actually some don't. We've come across some of those that don't. But obviously, your ambitions for direct debit or automatic end-of-year subscriptions renewals need to be informed by what your payment provider can support. Once you've got a new renewal, you need to provide some stock. You need to provide, and that could be sacks, or it could be supply of a new bin. Although we are aware of some councils that provide services where residents purchase their own sacks from DIY or supermarkets, and it's residents' own sacks that are collected, avoiding the problem of providing stock completely, but adding complexity in the type of receptacles that have to be picked up. We've also got councils who require their sacks to be used, but for those sacks to be purchased by residents from the local library. So it's not necessarily just a green bin service that you provide. There are a variety of approaches here, and ideally your IT system, if you are providing sacks or bins, will help you monitor your stock levels, warn you if stocks are getting low, and enable you to deliver new bins when a new subscription is taken out. Word about contract durations. Now, the contract duration is a very common discussion point with our customers. Typically, the contract subscriptions are for a year, and that's all well and good. But if you've got a fixed renewal point or several fixed renewal points, what do you do with residents who want to take out a new contract 1 month after one of your standard start points? Do you offer them an 11, if it's a month after the start point, do you offer them an 11-month service? Or, and we see all manner of approaches here. I think our learning from this is that it's much more straightforward if you can keep all of your contracts to a full year. And that works, provided you don't fall into the Glastonbury problem, where the Glastonbury problem being that within an hour, 2.5 million people attempted to buy tickets for Glastonbury 2024. There are only 210,000 available apparently, but the level of IT that you need to support 2.5 million people trying to get a Glastonbury ticket, or all of your residents wanting to renew or take out new garden waste subscriptions at the same time, the level of IT needed and the testing of that IT needed is way more demanding than if you can balance your renewals and your subscription uptake through the year. So I think our strong guidance there would be to do everything you can to avoid the Glastonbury problem and spread subscription renewals and uptake throughout the year when residents want. That's our experience. Next slide, please, Mark. So having talked there about keeping things simple and 1-year contracts, and point 7, you probably will find the need to have your initial subscription for more than a 12-month period. And that's based on our experience of once a resident takes out a new subscription by whatever method, you will need some time probably to organise the delivery of the bin. And once the bin is delivered, then there's another period of time before their first collection starts. And that has the potential to lead to resident dissatisfaction if their 1-year subscription started from the point they made payment. So quite commonly, we find the first year is a 13 or even 14-month period to reduce the resident dissatisfaction and the calls that can result from that. Contract renewals. Well, the contract renewals, subscription renewals need to start with some kind of resident reminder. Now, a PermiServ sticker on the bin is a real help with this, because it's every time a resident puts their bin out. Certainly I'm reminded every time I put my bin out that my contract runs through until October 2024. It's there and it's in my face. But as well as that, you'll want some kind of emails or texts, and that's a process that can be triggered by your back-end operational system, via your contact relationship management system, via your website, to get those renewal emails and text messages out to your customers. For customers that don't renew, for residents that choose point 9 here, not to renew, a question came up earlier about do you collect the bins? And we see that we operate a system where if a renewal does not take place, that can generate a work item, a job for a crew to go and collect the green bin the next time the round is due to go out. So yes, non-renewals can be collected, and those green bins can be recycled, reused, saving you money overall. Point 10, stock control, really it's a second bin point, this one. And so if a resident wants a second bin, are you going to allow it? And if you do, at what point can they add the second bin? Again, we see simplicity if your subscriptions can be kept aligned within each property, so that a resident can only procure a second bin at the point of renewal of the first subscription. That avoids the problems and the complexities of when they renew, which service are they renewing, and how do you distinguish between the two? So again, our experience is keep things simple, and if residents want a second bin, keep it aligned, keep the dates of the subscription aligned with the first one. And finally, correct collections. I'm sure a challenge for all of you. Even with a stickered bin, if you're operating stickered bins, do your crews pick up a bin without a sticker? Now, if there is a valid subscription on that property and the resident simply hasn't bothered to put the sticker on the bin, or it won't have fallen off, they're good stickers. I've got them on my own bin. But if a resident hasn't bothered to put a sticker on, does your crew collect or not? Well, if they've got an in-cab system informed by the back office system, then the crews have their point of reference about whether there is a valid subscription on that property. So a real benefit there in having in-cab as well as stickers. And so, yeah, let's have the next slide, please, Mark. So what do you want to provide then? Well, kind of pulling together several strands of what I've been talking about here, you want to encourage resident online interaction through CRM, through resident CRM website, or through a resident application on their phones. And resident apps can have additional benefits of providing prompts the night before a collection is due to put the correct bin out. We've got several councils who value that service. But also via the resident online interaction, to be able to, for the resident to be able to perform all of the interactions that they need to make and never need to resort to using the phone call. Based on resident interactions, you then want your back office system to, for a new subscription, to send out notifications to PermiServ to get those packs printed, delivered to your residents. You want the back office system, when there's a new subscription, to perhaps automatically allocate the collection to the existing green service on that street without the need for manual intervention. Because as well as Imogen said, it's about this is about maximizing income, but also about reducing the operating burden of providing the service. This is where IT can really help. So automatic allocation to rounds is a benefit. The back office system could also automatically create a bin delivery worksheet and assign that to the delivery crew, as well as updating the in-cab app for the green collection crew, that there is to inform them that there is a new collection at the property. And also, if there is an assisted lift on a property, for the new green waste subscription to automatically get the assisted lift notification rather than someone having to manually insert it again. And for the in-cab solution, your crews need to know where the valid subscriptions are. They need to be able to confirm that collections have been completed. They need to be able to report contaminations. They need to be able to report when bins are not presented, all of which will prevent the need to go and make good. And so keep the data flowing through so that you know you've got the evidence of contaminations with photographs if the crew have devices that will take photographs in cab, to give you a complete service. And with that, I will hand back to Mark.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. So hopefully that gives you an overall flavour of what an in-cab system can look like, from resident interaction through to the operational back office staff, utilising those tools all the way through to your actual operators out collecting your garden waste, and how that would look like. So I'm very conscious of time, but what I wanted to do very briefly is just give you a few overviews of what our clients have told us the advantages of actually utilising in-cab technology within a garden waste service actually looks like. And a couple of these are linked to what Dave was talking about. So if I start at the top with the route planning and dynamic scheduling, most of you who provide a municipal service will have some element of route planning technology. And if you implement in-cab technology in your garden waste service, this allows you to then utilise that tool to actually plan the most effective routes and make sure that they are being followed by sending them down to your waste collectors through the mobile technology that you'll have in cab. This means that the crews are following the routes that you want them to follow, which are the most effective, but also linking into dynamic scheduling. It allows for them to adapt to changes that might happen throughout the day. So a broken down truck, for example, utilising in-cab technology, you can very quickly take the work that was meant to be handled by that broken down vehicle and automatically allocate it to another vehicle to ensure that the service remains high, even though a change has happened throughout the day. So responsiveness increases to changes throughout the day, reducing travel time, fuel consumption, etc. Linking briefly into that, data-driven decision-making. So when you have an in-cab system on your collection vehicles, you can capture valuable data as well as displaying data to your drivers. So that could be something as simple as capturing a successful collection of garden waste, but it can be a whole variety of other things, a contaminated bin, notifying somebody that, to Dave's example earlier, there are too many bins, you're only paying for one, but the resident has tried to be cheeky and put two out, all the way through to don't walk bys, right? So providing extra value to the local authority by ensuring that all this data is being captured. And that moves on a bit further. So there's valuable data collection points, but then also you can use that data to provide information on waste volumes, operational performance, and so on and so forth. When I talk about comms and customer interaction, what I mean here is there's kind of 2 points. So when I talk about communication, I mean communication between the depot and the drivers and waste collectors out in the field. By utilising in-cab technology, that ability to communicate with your staff out in the field becomes seamless. And that helps to improve coordination and allowing quick responses to changes or issues that might happen throughout the day. Again, using that example I said earlier, been very quickly able to communicate with your team. Someone's broken down, we're allocating you four more jobs, and they are going to automatically come through on your in-cab device. When we talk about customer interaction, because your staff in the field are capturing more data by using an in-cab system, you can provide a much more dynamic and almost real-time update to your residents. So providing them updates, giving them feedback. If you haven't collected their bin, if you can take a photo using your in-cab system to show them why, contamination, for example, that all helps in driving customer satisfaction, engagement, and actually ensuring that they stick to the rules that you are setting regarding garden waste. Environmental impact, quite an obvious one perhaps, but very important. If you are using efficient routes, using optimized schedules, that will contribute to a reduction in fuel consumption and an increase in efficiency, which will align with everybody's sustainability goals to help the environment as much as possible. And last but not least, of course, if you're running an efficient service and you're reducing fuel, there will be cost savings by using in-cab technology. So if any of you were desperate to get a business case together for procuring an in-cab system, I hope that was of use and help. Like I said before, not a sales pitch, but if you're interested in seeing the white space technology system, we'd be more happy to show that to anybody. So last but not least, just wanted to say thank you very, very much. I appreciate that myself and Dave are the people that are between yourselves and a break. However, if there are any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. We do have one question that's come in from Stephen Matthews. Is green waste bins are the most broken bins, as you have the double kicker on the bin lift. Green waste is also damp, so it does not empty a bin, only has a lifespan of so many lifts. I'm not sure if that's a question or kind of a comment.
I think that explains to us why our customers tell us that green bins are most damaging. Thank you very much for the
We can
If
put
there-
that into the next presentation and pretend like it was our knowledge. So that. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Is there any more questions while we have Mark and Dave online? Please put them in now. Otherwise, like Mark said, we will be moving to a short break quickly before our next set of presentations this afternoon. So I'm sure if any do come through, or if you have any follow-ups, I'm sure the team would be happy to get in touch and talk to you. So no problem there. Okay. Well, thank you so much both. That was really, oh, someone has asked one just in the nick of time. What CRM system can you integrate with? Someone asks.
We integrate with a very large number of CRM systems. In fact, I don't think we've come across one we can't integrate with. We operate a secure but open API, so that all transactions required for garden waste can be operated through the API. Yes, and with more than 120 customers, as Mark says, just about every CRM system out there is something we could integrate with.
Perfect. Someone says GOSS, GOSS. Is that one that you've come
Yes,
across?
we have
Yeah.
integrated with those.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you both so much. We will head to a short break now, and we'll see everyone back at 12:15. Josh, the editor of Let's Recycle, will be taking over from me chairing. So thank you all so much for your participation and all your questions this morning. And yeah, see you soon.
Hello. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Hope you had a good break. My name is Joshua Doherty, the editor of Let's Recycle. I am taking over from Amy to sort of chair the remainder of the session. So coming up then at 12:15, our next speaker, we have Louise Lambon from PermiServ. So she'll be kicking off the afternoon session. So hopefully everything's working. Louise can hear me, and we can kick things off from there.
Hi. Well, I'd love to say things are working, but the presentation's got a couple of pages missing. But one thing I'm good at is talking, so I'll be able to blag it as much as possible. And so thank you for the introduction, Josh. You have to forgive me, everyone. I've got a bit of a cold today. Not going to whinge about it, but I do have one. But thank you, everyone, for coming. So we've done, this is our second event. This is obviously the web only one. And some of the feedback that came from the last event was that they didn't really know where PermiServ kind of fitted into the garden waste conversation. And so I've taken that on board, and I thought I'll just do a little bit about that, basically answering that. Josh, is my presentation on there? And you're muted as well. Going well so far, isn't it?
So far, I can only see a picture of your face and your name.
Yeah.
Can't see the presentation, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's not the end of the world. What I can do is I will look at my presentation and just talk through it. 2 seconds, everybody. Nothing like pressure right at the last minute. Okay, so where do we fit in? So we normally come in at the beginning of these conversations, to be honest. Oh, there we go. And about looking at better ways to run the garden waste service, advice, opinions. I've been with PermiServ now 7 years and been fortunate enough to be involved in a lot of those conversations. So we've kind of gained knowledge over the last 7 years, really. And predominantly we do the permits, as that's been covered in other these sessions, and the letter and the supporting documentation with a portal to support it, to help you manage it. But we also are there to help and try and simplify those processes. 2 seconds. It's not letting me move on the slides, Josh. Oh, thank you. Okay, so
a couple of seconds delay.
Okay. I don't know what button I press. That's a good start, isn't it? So our ethos is we're here to help. We're here to try and make things a bit more simple and simplify the processes and the terminology. Every single meeting I think I've ever had has always started with that fear factor. It's almost like garden waste is a poison chalice at councils. And I know from having these conversations that there is so much to think about. But what I don't want is that to come into where we fit in, because actually it's a really simple process. And I want everyone to finish a meeting with us knowing that it can be simple. So we're really privileged. We work with over 80 councils, soon to be 100. And we've got really good relationships with all the councils, hence why a lot of those are here today sharing their knowledge. And we really value that, and it helps us learn and grow and develop in the waste sector. Even just at the beginning of this week, I did a podcast, and that was actually about food waste. And it's really interesting for us to hear what you guys are talking about so that we can, I don't know, add some value or see if there's something we can add to our products and services to see if it can tie in and make it easier. So we're always trying to grow. And ultimately, our product is actually created by councils for councils. So it makes it really easy because we know that it works because it's been created by you, really. And all of the problems that come up in all of these meetings that we have, we address those and add. So in the last 7 years, our product has evolved both as a permit and as the system. Sorry, next slide. Yeah. Okay, so I thought I'd just go over a few things. I really don't want this to be a sales thing, which is why I didn't do it at the last event. That's not what these events are for. What we want to do is give you a platform to share knowledge and help run a really successful garden waste service. But I just thought there's a couple of frequently asked questions that we get, and I'm just going to go over a couple of these. I'm not going to go into loads of depth. So if there is something on here you think, actually, I want to know a bit more about that, I can put you in contact with a council that has had a problem, or they're more helpful on these questions. But a couple of the ones we have is why do we need permits when I have an in-cab? We get that a lot. And we find that it's a support alongside in-cab. It's an easy way of your crew identifying a paid for subscription. So it works alongside, hand in hand. We talk to in-cab providers like Whitespace here, Bartec, Web Aspect or Routeware, and they give us the data, and it should be a really clear transition between the two. Rolling or yearly, that is a question that comes up all the time. I'm not even going to claim I know anything about it. I just know that the rolling is more admin heavy. But again, if you do have anything about that, let me know, and I've got some contacts that would definitely be able to help you on that. Integration, we integrate with everybody. We own our own software. And much like Whitespace said earlier, it's something that we do a lot, and every single council that we work with, we integrate with. So I'll just do a couple of other ones. So how do you know permits are dispatched? So we're really unique. We actually have 100% inspection on our permits. So we know if our system's saying that those permits have been dispatched, and we know they have. They've been given to the Royal Mail, and we give you a view of that system. So you've got that in front of you to help manage the service. Price includes everything. Again, we're very unique. We say a per permit price rather than permits changing in price. So a lot of other providers will say if you send out 20,000, it will be X price. And if you send out one, it'll be £6. We know that the service doesn't run like that. You get peaks and troughs. You'll get a spike in February, March, then it will tail off, then July, and then tail off, and then October. We learned that, and we make sure that our service runs how your service needs to run. So the price, we do it per permit price, and you know then what your forecast is for the year. So if you know that you're going to have 20,000 permits that year, it's an easy calculation to make how much this service is going to cost you. The last one I just want to touch on is a case study that's come up quite recently, which is why is a separate permit better than an integrated permit? We do both, and there has been arguments to say that the integrated permit is more environmentally friendly, but we found recently that because it's PET, it actually isn't more environmentally friendly, and half the time it will go into the wrong waste bin anyway. Plus, it's integral to the letter, so therefore you can never remove that letter. So what we suggest, and what most councils who work with us use, is the separate permit, which means then if you use a QR code system that we launched this year, for example, you can have your calendar and such like on there and a copy of your letter, meaning that the following year you can eliminate that letter, saving waste, saving money. And I think that actually is a better impact on the environment and your wallets, which ultimately is the best solution. So I'm going to leave that slide there, so I don't want to go too crazy on that. So as I say, ask away afterwards. Cool, there's a massive delay on this. I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know why this is a delay. Josh, I don't know if you've got control, if you can do it. Perfect. Well, we'll go there, that's fine. So a little bit more in depth about us. Again, I don't want to go too far, but the product itself is a permit. I think you've seen those on other of the chats this morning. Permit, envelope, double-sided A4 letter, and then you've got the supporting software. The reason why that's so important is you know what's happening. You can see a clear you can have clear information in front of you. When a resident calls, it gets that call off the phone quickly because you've got the accurate information in front of you. It's live. It gives you the ability.
Sorry, Louise, you've just gone on to mute there. Your camera and your...
Perfect.
Yeah, and your camera. Okay. Oh, there we are.
There we go. Where did I get to before I muted?
Yeah.
Did you hear about what I said about the permits?
Sorry, just cut off before that, I think.
Perfect. Okay, and I was on a roll then as well. Okay, so the product itself is a permit, an envelope, and a double-sided letter. I think you've seen this on previous talks this morning. And then you've got the software. So the software is really important, and we don't actually do the permits without it for this reason, because it gives you the ability to monitor, act, and look at live information on the system to manage your permits. Often if you do it internally or if you use a mail house, you'll find that you actually don't know necessarily what's gone out, what's happening, and you aren't able to give a resident the information on the phone at the time. So then the admin side of things is quite huge, especially when you're first going chargeable, because that first 6 weeks, you are going to get a huge call rate because they are angry that you started charging and they want to give you grief and they call a lot. So we're trying to help mitigate that by, at least if they're trying to call you about, oh, where's my permit, and such, like, you can see that in front of you. Again, if anyone wants to know more about this, please do get in touch and we can do a demo on the system and show you more of the functionalities. It does a vast array of reporting as well for helping the transition from free of charge to chargeable. So we're happy to go through that. A couple of our USPs. We have a great product, it sticks. You need to be mindful of that. It needs to work for your service. It needs to stick on that bin for a year, and it needs to have durability, because especially if you've got a QR code on it, it needs to be able to be scanned by your resident for the duration of that term. So we've invested a lot of time and money in making sure that our product does what it needs to do to run the service. I think I said before, we've got 100% inspection for our factory. So what we say has gone out. We're constantly adding to our system after speaking to councils to add value wherever we can, hence the QR code in April. We really think that will add value, especially in year 2, and to help comms with your residents. So therefore, it should help reduce your call rate, it should help reduce missed bins, it should help reduce contamination, because it's all there scannable for your resident. We do everything under our own roof. So we print, we pack, and we dispatch. So it means that we have flexibility to do things that also you will need. Like Mrs. Smith calls up 10 times, she wants a replacement. We can pull that, we can send it out by Royal Mail First Class if you need us to. That's the sort of flexibility we have. If you are on a tight schedule, often these decisions are made quite quickly and within councils, and then you're put on the back foot. We can do things quickly because we're in charge of it. So if you need to have things sent out in 3 to 5 days, we send things out in 3 to 5 days. We really do consider ourselves the experts now in garden waste. We deal with, I think at the end of April, it would be 50% of councils that charge garden waste we'll be working with. And we've made it our business to learn about it. We go to all the seminars, go to all the LARIC events and RWM, just to make sure we keep our knowledge up and talking about the same things you guys are really. And we help from that first meeting. We get involved, we give advice, we share knowledge, we give you contacts at other councils as well to try and help that. And we give you platforms like today, and like on 2nd of July, we've got another one which is live in Birmingham that will have other guest speakers talking about it. So that, again, reinforcing this knowledge to help run a really successful garden waste service. Bits of advice, I guess, that I hear about, and I think a lot of this has already been mentioned, so I'm not going to bore you. Again, if you want to go into any more depth on this, please do it. But we recommend sticking to the rear of the bin so that the resident is promoted to present the bin handle side to help your crew collect. Have the address on the permit so that that's read through the window of the envelope, so you know it's definitely been delivered. Have a short window between sign up and dispatch, so they don't have a long time before they go live, before your go live date, because otherwise it just gets put on the side and then you end up having high replacement rates. Most councils go live in February, March, obviously not April. Again, I think that was mentioned earlier. We also recommend a bright colour for year 1. When your crew aren't looking for these permits straight away, it's a really good way of seeing it instantly. So bright yellow, bright orange, they're my recommendation for year 1. They are really visual, and it will help capture those potential stolen bins, which you will get year one, often as high as 7%. It will be all of those people that have collected bins over the years, and they think, oh, I tell you what, I'm going to tell them that my permit hasn't arrived, so I get a replacement. And then I'm going to stick that to my other bins, and basically stealing those bins and not paying for them. So we've got other things that we can help mitigate against that for you as well. Helping with clear communications with residents, simple pricing, no concessions. These are just things that I hear about in meetings, and they do seem to have a less administrative burden, but I also know that these are other people that will be making those decisions. Massively important is speak to your neighbouring councils. What do they do? How much do they charge? Because obviously the residents will know other people in neighbouring councils, and it really helps that comms with your residents. And again, the QR code dashboard for communication is really good. Instant updates on it as well. It really helps with the communication of the project. That's a really a powerful slide, isn't it? Our events and why, nothing on it, perfect. So basically, like I said before, it's a platform to share knowledge. I think it's really valuable. One of the main things I learned from all the other events that I've been to is sharing that knowledge, and it really does help. And that's why we're going to continue doing these free of charge events with as many of our current customers we work with as possible, and the ones we don't work with, to give everyone a clear representation of what works, what doesn't, lesson learned. Let's try and make this run smoothly. So we will be publishing for our 2nd of July one in Birmingham soon. So obviously we'll have other guest speakers on that as well. So do let us know if you're interested in coming to that event as well. I think that's my last slide. Yes. Does anyone have any questions?
Great. Yeah, a handful have come in actually, so we
Okay.
can run through that. So the first one asked that, do you think that PermiServ could apply the same process as the garden waste subscription for food waste take up as well?
That's an interesting topic. I was only talking about that on Monday in our podcast. Yeah, I think so. I think it could work for anything. We do it for commercial. And I really like the idea of having this kind of structure for all bins, because as a resident, I actually would love to be able to have a way of not just copying my neighbours, which, you know, one will throw you out and I'll end up putting the wrong bin out. And yeah, so I think that's a really good tool. So yeah, I think food waste, it'll be a really interesting project. So if anyone does want to do that, we can do a project, a case study maybe, and see what we could do to make that work.
Okay. And the next question was just, can you explain what an integrated permit is, a bit more, elaborate on that point?
Yeah, of course. So it's more the data. So there's two ways of uploading the data to us. One is a more manual process. So you can extract the data from either your CRM system, we can talk directly to your web form, or we can extract the data from your in-cab provider. Or you can do it automated. So that would be an API connection to any of those CRM systems, in-cab providers, which would put the data into our portal. So all we really need is the address, delivery address, quantity and expiry date. That's only really relevant if you're going to do rolling, where the expiry date would change. And then that means the data comes through, you come in the morning and all the data's there ready to go, and you don't have to do anything, basically. It's to take away that administrative burden.
Okay. I think that sort of ties into the next question from an anonymous attendee saying that, does your back-end portal deal with payments as well?
No, it doesn't. That's a question that's come up in the last 7 years. And it's just not an investment we think is worth it when there's so many other companies that offer that service that are already integral to your systems. And I think it would just be an additional cost that's not required. I believe genuinely that the in-cab provider, if you have one, they all have now pretty much a front-end system available. And I think personally, to run a really good garden waste product and service, that is the best and the most efficient way of doing it. You've got everything in front of you. You know then that the data is correct. It's all using one system. And I think that's ultimately the goal. So I don't think it's something we're going to look at unless 20 councils come to us saying, can you do it? I think we're going to leave that to everyone else.
Right, okay. Next one here from Sam. He says he's actually spoken to you before. He has garden sacks on his contract, or the council's contract. And have you found a way in which those stickers would stick to those garden sacks?
Oh, so that is a recent project that we've been looking at. It depends on the sack, and a lot of the ones that we've had are quite a woven material, so the adhesive hasn't got as much to bond to, so we're finding it doesn't work as well. So we're actually just about to go live with a council with tags. It's a A5 tag that you peel out of a liner, and then that is put around the handle of the sack. It's only just about to go live, so I don't really have any data or feedback to give anyone, so I wouldn't like to say, but from all the testing that we've done internally and the council has looked at, that may be a way of doing it. There was a council 2 years ago that did use little labels on the sacks, and it was used per week as opposed to it staying on the bag all the time, so it wasn't actually that much of a problem if it came off. So it's just loads and loads of little ones that they just put on each week to make sure that it's shown it had been paid for. So there are other options, but it's a continual process to try and find a solution that works.
Okay, next one's from Sophie. She says, what happens with permits on properties which have more than one bin at the address? Was one permit cover the whole address? Or is it per bin? She just adds that she has some properties which has sort of 8+ bins.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so that's basically a group permit. So you've got 3 different types of permit with PermiServ. You've got a standard, which is a single permit to a single address, a group, which is more than one permit to a single address, and remote, which is more than one to a different address. The reason why that's relevant is if churches, landlords, and vulnerable people, we would have another insert in front of the address with the delivery address on it, and that would be sent to them so that they could have someone else apply it to the bin. So there's 3 different types. They're all managed on the system, so you can see who's a group, so you can see the addresses have got 8 or more bins, and they're packed in the same envelope. I believe Royal Mail takes up to 9, but don't quote me on that.
Okay. Okay, great. And that brings us to the end of the questions then from the attendees.
Okay. Oh, that was fairly painless, wasn't it? Good.
So we can then move on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Thank you, Louise. So the next speaker we have now is Angie Keach, the Project's Compliance and Administration Officer for the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham, where she's worked since 2016. She's part of the original team when the service began, and is now personally responsible for the administration support for GGW. Angie's duties include setting up and running the service and working together with waste operations. So Angie, I will pass over to you. I'll come off and we'll go from there.
Lovely. Is my sound on now?
It is indeed, yes.
Brilliant. Thank you, because it wasn't necessarily showing whether it was or not. So let me just move on to the first one. Right. Thank you, Josh. Right. I wish I knew then what I know now. That's very true. The service is continually evolving, and we're repeatedly changing and developing to ensure an efficient and smooth running service. My name's Angie Keach, and I've worked for London Borough of Barking and Dagenham since 2016. I provide the administration service for Green Garden Waste and was part of the original team that started up the service back in 2017. So I have the full service history in my head, if only I could remember everything. 2024 will be the 8th year that we have provided garden waste services to our residents. This is not moving forwards. Oh, yes, it is, just obviously a little bit slow. We provide the Green Garden Waste Collection Service for approximately 7,500 residents each year. We take payments online, in person, through our libraries and community hubs, over the phone, and by cheque and postal order from our more vulnerable residents who may not have an alternative way of paying. We don't currently use direct debits. Residents need to renew and pay each year if they want to continue the service. Although I think a rolling direct debit would make life easier, as the price changes each year, with the current economic climate, at the moment our residents physically have to make the choice to sign up again. The service for 2024 costs £50, which is payable in advance. The full service offers 19 collections on a fortnightly basis if residents sign up by the 14th of February. Our tagline is Love your garden, sign up by Valentine's Day. A bit cheesy, but residents remember the date. This equates to £2.63 a collection. There's no pro rata payment. Every resident pays the same price, no matter when they sign up. If residents sign up once the service has started, this will reduce the amount of collections provided by us. The service runs between the middle of March and the end of the first week in December. We start to promote the new service in mid-January. We send out reminder emails to past customers and letters to those who are not online and failed emails. Using this timeline, residents are able to sign up again before the deadline of 14th of February so they can benefit from all offered collections. In addition, for returning and new customers, we promote the service using physical and online advertising. In the past, this has included newspapers, railing banners, vehicles, posters, leaflets, roadshows, digital screens, online newsletters, and general social media. Our permit history. We started off with a yellow permit with a permit number. We didn't realise that some people would colour copy and use these fake permits. We're also told that these fake permits were being sold or shared. We overcame this by using a hologram which cannot be copied without showing that it's fake. Should have gone on to the next one. Lovely. Choose your background colours wisely. In 2018, we chose an orange background. This colour had more red than yellow in the orange. So instead of fading over the year like the yellow permit did, the red colour grew stronger. So the year afterwards, when we'd already chosen pink, it was difficult to see the difference between both of the permits. Lost and stolen permits. Residents had told us that their permit had been lost or stolen, so we sent out replacements. Sometimes this was a ploy to get a second free permit. So at that point, we added replacement to highlight to the crew that the permit had been replaced. Due to continued working from home in 2021, it wasn't possible to continue to manually process these permits. At this point, we started to use PermiServ. It is important to ensure that what's printed on that permit does not break GDPR. The address only is printed on the front. Personal data is information that relates to an identified or identifiable person or individual. The reason that the name is not on the permit is that the name along with the address could be used to identify a person where the address alone doesn't. The administration side of the service. I would not recommend having an individual service phone number. Is that coming up? I remember coming in on a Monday to over 200 messages, trying to listen and answer these, even asking for the rest of our service to help, prevented me from providing the service. Again, at the start of the service, our inbox became overloaded with miscollection reports. Our miscollections need to be reported online so that we can keep a record and track them. Vulnerable residents can call the contact centre who will fill in the form for them if they're not online. Have a timeline that miscollections can be reported. Ours is 10 p.m. on the scheduled collection day until 6 p.m. the next working day. Outside of these times, we do not investigate. Make your terms and conditions clear and ensure that they do not contain acronyms or jargon that may be misunderstood. Also have a privacy notice regarding the protection of the personal data. Our terms and conditions have been approved by the Plain English campaign. Try to think of answers to any possible queries or complaints about the service and turn these into template answers you can use again and again. As new queries come in, add these to the list for future reference. I found this list invaluable over the years, and it also helps when I'm away from the office, when others are covering my duties. There's a couple of questions that are listed there. Have a crystal ball. At times, complaints can come in that leave you speechless. One of them was, My green bin fell in the back of the refuse vehicle during the last collection. Why didn't your crew climb into the vehicle and get the bin out? Well, the reason for that is it's a serious breach of our health and safety policy, and there's a real risk of serious injury or death to the crew member. I never ever would have dreamed that question would have been asked. Green waste bins. We use 140 litre branded green bins. We do not collect from customers that may have bought the bins from the shops. The reason for this is we know that our bins are manufactured to BS EN 840, which ensures the bins are dimensionally correct to lock onto the bin lorry for when they're lifted for emptying. If you use an uncertified bin, it may result in it falling, which is obviously safety risks. In addition, uncertified bins may not be as strong and could break or split more easily. The only way that the collection crew can be certain they're picking up a certified bin if it's stamped with our logo and it's provided directly by us. Before the paid service started in 2017, we provided Green Garden waste collections for free. At that time, we delivered to all eligible addresses a bin for this free service, which means that there's a large number of bins that are not being used. If a resident doesn't want to pay for the service, they can ask us to remove the bin. We will empty and wash the bin, ready for it to be delivered to new customers. We do not charge for green bins because we use the recycled bins. Our website and terms and conditions explain that we don't use brand new bins. In addition, if a resident signs up for the service, we assume they've already got a green bin unless they put in a request for a bin to be delivered. Again, this is clearly detailed on the signing up page on our website. Missed collections. If a resident feels that their green bin was not collected, as said before, they're able to log a missed collection online between 10 p.m. on their scheduled collection day and 6 p.m. the next working day. I respond to these residents online and an auto email is sent to the resident with explanation. The reasons it could be missed: the bin could be contaminated, it wasn't presented, the bin was empty, or the crew have said that they did collect from it. I take this information from my crew round sheet. If a green bin is contaminated, it is vital to have photographs. Our crews take photographs of the front of the bin, showing the permit and the contents. Here are some pictures of contaminated green bins, overfilled with side waste, recycling, West Ham cushion, did they lose that week? Broken hedge trimmer, food, paint, plastic and a tree. There's no way that tree can be called a twig. We also use bin tags, which advise the resident why the bin was not collected and clearly show what can and cannot be put in the bin. We are a collection-only authority and must abide by the terms and guidelines of ELWA, East London Waste Authority. ELWA collects our Green Garden waste and windrow composting is used to turn it into compost. We do not take pictures of unpresented or empty green bins, as the crew do not have the capacity to do this and complete the rounds on time. The resident may not agree with my answer and then put in a corporate complaint. The resident may say that our information is not correct. This can become our word versus their word and can lead to accusations of dishonesty and falsehood. Our refuse vehicles are fitted with 4 cameras, which are located on the front, both sides and rear. This footage can be downloaded and examined to investigate any discrepancies, and we use this information to formally answer the complaint. Ask for help and advice from neighbouring councils who are already running the service. During 2020, when we were still working from the office, our whole department were hand stuffing envelopes with letters and permits for the service. During lockdown and working from home, this would have been unworkable for 2021, as I would have been on my own at home trying to do 7,500 permits. I contacted Havering Council to ask for advice, as I knew their permit looked different to ours. They were extremely helpful and explained their process to me, which involved using PermiServ to print and send out permits to residents. Following on from this, we've used PermiServ ever since, which has made life so much easier. I ask for help and share what's worked for us with other councils. This includes charging for green bins, councils that use bags rather than bins, and whether a central collection point would work in addition to curbside collections. And this was an idea that we had of adding bags to our collections. Residents could bring this to a designated area where we would be waiting with a refuse vehicle. After speaking with another council who had also considered this option, we decided not to proceed as it could prove to be very costly if there was a low uptake from customers. Other councils have been in touch with me to ask for help and advice or queries of how we run the service. Unlike council tax, paying for the Green Garden Waste service is optional. I still get emails from residents asking why they have to pay for this service. The answer is if you don't agree with paying for it, you don't have to, but you will need to make your own arrangements to dispose of your garden waste. We feel that our service is good value for money compared to bagging up your garden waste, driving to the local tip, which costs a resident time and fuel. We do want customer satisfaction, and the vast majority of our residents are happy with our service. But remember, you can't always give the resident what they want. Our policy is if the resident puts the wrong item in the green bin, contamination, we cannot collect from it. The crew will return on the next scheduled collection day in 2 weeks' time. If the resident then removes the items and expects us to return immediately, this is not part of the contract as sent out in our terms and conditions. I would say again, make sure your terms and conditions are clear and cannot be misunderstood, as this is an agreement between the council and the customer. Always respond in a polite and professional manner, no matter how difficult the customer may be. Sometimes residents will ask, oh, just this once, please. But this means you're favouring one customer over another and will lead to further problems. Make sure your responses are fair and taken from the terms and conditions. Keep templates of generic or factual responses and use these each time. If everyone uses their own wording, these responses can lead to contradictory information which could result in complaints being upheld against the council. But then saying that, each year, we do have letters, emails, and social media comments that do complement our service. Many customers feel that we're providing a professional value for money service. Some residents who do not have transport have said that the service is invaluable to them. I wish you every success with the implementation of the Green Garden Waste service within your organisation. My final thoughts are, keep your sense of humour. I always find something each day that makes me smile. That tree was definitely not a twig. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Angie. Much appreciated. Did the resident claim that it was a part of their garden waste, that tree, or?
Sorry?
Resident claim it was sort of a garden.
Yeah. We've had whole trees in there. I couldn't find the picture, but we had a car seat put in there once, children's car seat. I went back to the resident and I just said, no, I'm really sorry. It's not Green Garden Waste.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Okay, great. Well, I had a couple of points I just wanted to bounce off before we move to the next speaker. You mentioned that it was rolled out. Was it 2017? Correct?
Yes.
Yes. And can you just sort of elaborate then some of how that, or how, or if indeed that service has evolved over that time?
So in 2016, when the free service finished, we contacted residents. We sent a little cardboard slip to everyone with, we're not going to be able to provide this service for free anymore. In theory, would you be prepared to pay for it? I thought you might ask this question, so I've just quickly found some information. So we got back, it was about 49% of people that replied said yes, and just over 50% said no, which was a difference of 20 people. And remember, our customer base is not huge. We're 7,500 customers, which is about 10%. So it's not a high amount of customers, but then we've got a lot of flatted estates in our borough. We've got a lot of new builds where they haven't got very big gardens. So we wouldn't expect our take up to be as high as some other boroughs. But we worked out that very first year that if we could get 3,000 customers to sign up, we would have enough money to offer the service. And that very first year we got 7,500, and it's been round about that each year.
Great. And a question here from Anna. She's asked that what do you do if a resident says someone else contaminated their bin after they presented it? So a passerby, for example.
We do get that, but the bin is the contents of the bin. It's a property. It's a responsibility of the resident to ensure their bin is presented properly. And that's the stand that we do take on that, because the crew may say, the resident, again, it's a lot of this your word versus our word, and the crew may say, yeah, but that was in there last week, and the resident will say, oh, I didn't put it in there, somebody walking across, did it. So we just and that's why we take the pictures.
Yeah, something you see quite a lot in like local.
I mean, oh, definitely. I mean, I've spoken to residents who've actually been screaming down the phone saying, my bin wasn't contaminated, my bin wasn't contaminated. And I say, well, no, actually, you've got 6 pumpkins in there from Halloween.
Yeah.
How do you know? I've got a picture in front of me.
Yeah.
And then I can share that picture with the resident, and having the permit on the front, plus all pictures, they've got a date and time stamp on them. So if the resident goes in, if you click into the picture, you can find out when that picture was actually taken.
And on the subject of pictures, anonymous attendee asks, how do the crews take pictures of that? Is it on their phones, and is it the
the drivers don't take any pictures at all, because obviously they're driving. It's the loaders that take the pictures, and the loaders have got their phones. They take the pictures, and then when they get back, they share it via WhatsApp because it's free.
And is it work phones, or is it on their own personal phones?
It's their personal phones.
Okay.
And our crews are fine with doing that.
Another question here from Sophie asks, do you suspend collections over the winter months?
Yes, we run from, so this year we're running from Monday the 18th of March if you're week 1, and Monday the 25th of March if you're week 2. If you're week 1, we finish on Friday the 29th of November, and if you're week 2, we end on Friday the 6th of December. So we have a seasonal collection of the optimum growing time in the year.
And just picking up on something mentioned, another anonymous attendee says, why can't pumpkins go in the garden waste bin?
Because it's food. We use windrow composting. As I said earlier on, we're bound by the guidelines of ELWA, East London Waste Authority, and they say to us that grass, twigs, flowers, weeds are the only things that can go in. Right. If other things are put in, we can't use windrow composting. We have to use a different type of composting where chemicals are added, and then that will increase the price.
So, okay. So another question, do you work with the waste operations team to plan the sort of garden waste collection round sheets?
Yes. Right at the beginning, the round sheets, we mirrored the recycling because it was fortnightly, as we are. And then there's just, a bit of jiggery poker. We've moved it around, over the years for something that works for us.
And just another one here, which is talking about the suspension over the winter period. Just asked that, a lot of it's interesting that a lot of authorities do that to stop over the winter. So we only suspend for 2 weeks over Christmas. So she just asked, what do people do with their sort of leaves in that time?
They can bag it up and bring it down to our tip, our local tip, if they want to. If they've got lots and lots of green garden waste, they can also book a bulky waste collection, a one-off.
Okay, great. That leads us to the end then. Thank you very much, Angie. Much appreciated. Thought that was really interesting to see the insights there. So we'll move then on to our next speaker, who is Darren Moore. So Darren Moore is the Waste and Business Development Manager at Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council. He's worked in local government for 30 years, initially in corporate performance and service improvement roles. He's a chartered resource and waste manager, assuming responsibility for waste management services in 2012. So Darren, I'll pass over to you. I'll mute myself and come off, and the stage is yours. Can't hear you, I'm afraid. I think you're on mute still. I can see your screen, but I'm afraid I can't hear or see you. I'm not sure. I'm afraid I can't see or hear Darren, I'm afraid. Does it say mute and video at the bottom? Are they both unticked? So there's a few technical issues. Let's see what we can sort out. Just give me 1 minute. Oh, there we are. That's brilliant sound, I'm afraid.
Okay, are we?
Oh, there we are. Yeah, I can hear you now, Darren.
I think we're live. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, we've got a bit of.
It's a bit echoey.
Bear with. How's that?
That's better. Yes,
Yeah,
perfect.
sorry about that bit of IT. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the joys of online webinars. But if I come off, then take it back to the start of the presentation, and we'll go from there.
Lovely, thanks.
Thank you.
Are you able to move the slides just back to the beginning, Josh? Yeah, or is it just a bit slow?
It takes a little while to catch up, but hopefully, if you sort of keep pressing back.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect.
Lovely. Thanks. Thanks for that, and thanks for inviting us to speak today. So, Jess and I are going to share some of our experience of implementing a chargeable garden waste system, as others have done today, which will hopefully be a benefit to councils thinking of doing the same. We'll look at things that have worked and things perhaps that you might want to avoid as well. So to begin, we'll give a brief context of where our charging journey started, and then Jess will have a look at some of the systems challenges around that, the payment options and the pros and cons of direct debits. So, like many councils, our charging implementation was driven by budget pressures. We're one of 7 districts in Leicestershire. We work in a 2-tier authority, with Leicestershire County Council being the disposal authority. And due to their own budget pressures in 2015, the County Council removed the payment of recycled credits for compostable waste. So that then left Hinckley and Bosworth Council with a deficit of around 350k in April 25. So the response to that, politically, there was nerves about implementing the charge, as you'd expect. So the decision in 15-16 was to meet that cost from budgets. Even in budget set in October 25 for the following year, 16-17, it was still unsure, probably right up till decision time, whether members were going to implement the charge, and they did in February 16. And then that left us officers 6 weeks to implement the service and get the comms out there to residents. So that was quite a pressure time, as you can imagine. So we're not doing a share tribute act today, and by no means am I singing, but if we could turn back time, these are some of the things that we would do again or do better that people may wish to consider. The first 4 we'll have a look at on the following slides in a bit more detail. But if we come to vehicles first for your fleet, if you start looking at modelling a reduction in perhaps tonnage, because you'll get less people using the service if they're having to pay, then all of a sudden people in finance tend to get a bit in terms of assumptions as to vehicle reduction. So advice from us there is wait till your system is fully implemented and make that assessment after, because if it's anything like us, we had a 76% take up, and that only reduced our tonnage by about 1,400 tonnes. And particularly if you're a rural area like us, then obviously you're still having to cover the same distance, even if you haven't got so many properties. So that's something key to bear in mind. Not an advert for our house today, but use bin stickers, definitely. There's always going to be terrace properties where the crews can't identify which bin belongs to which property, and cul-de-sacs. And believe you me, if you empty a bin without a sticker, you'll get as many complaints from non-subscribers as those that have paid as well, if you empty somebody that hasn't paid. So just bear that in mind as well. Of course, 6 weeks wasn't long enough. We'd want probably at least 12 months looking back. A multi-service project team was key. So friends from finance, ICT, customer service were very nervous about the amount of contacts that were going to hit them and whether they would be able to cope. So engaging them up front and seeing what risks could be managed in terms of that. And then finally, a systems officer that understands the service. So enter Jess, who will be speaking shortly. Somebody that understands and can facilitate the language between teams, or understands that. So for reference, Jess was a waste management officer, but also had responsibility for our waste systems. Her roles developed through this project and others in terms of talking the language of ICT and financial system payments. And Jess's role has now been branded as such and does the job as what she does do and has done in terms of bringing all those multi-streams together so that the finance team, the ICT team deliver something that both the customer and the service want. There's a danger that finance will give a solution that doesn't quite match with ICT and that doesn't quite match with what the waste service can provide. So that is really key in terms of bringing all those together. So if you have a Jess in your organisation, go and find them and employ them. Okay, just to come back to the main point on the last slide. So consultation was key, as well as a statutory duty at the time that we had to consult for a major service change. I think that has now gone. It also helped quell some of the political nerves about implementing a charge. So as with all consultations, you have to ask the questions. To be precise, if you ask somebody if they want a free service or a paid for service, then they will tell you a free one. So be clear on your messaging and your price range that you wish to be considered. So from that, residents told us, or 40% told us they would be willing to pay a £35 charge. We were a low tax council in Hinckley and Bosworth, 10th lowest in the country. So our rates would be nothing like charges in the south of the country. And also, which was, again, helped quell some of the political nerves, look over your neighbours' shoulders to see what they're charging, because obviously nobody wants to be the highest charging council in their area. And come to the last point, and that's where we ended up. So the focus was a low charge, try and retain our recycling performance at the same time, and something that was affordable to residents but met the budget deficit. So a relatively low charge, I think, by any council standards at the time, and that paid dividends in us achieving 76% take up, and as I mentioned, only 1,400 tonnes reduction in our tonnage. Okay. So the service itself, our systems were very basic. They wouldn't speak to each other, and more from that on Jess on the next few slides. So in reality, with the timescale that we had, and on that very fact that we could only have one price, we couldn't have multi-prices in the systems wouldn't allow it. So because the price was relatively low, there was no concessions, as perhaps for the bulky waste collection, say, where residents receiving benefits would get a discount. And then the collection system, again, no part payments for part years. It's a full service for the full year, regardless of how you use a service. 51 collections a year, standing down just one collection over the Christmas period, and it's a fortnightly service. So again, that would be our message. If, as most councils or districts with small budgets don't have eloquent systems, then keep your product as simple as it can to help you be able to deliver it efficiently. Communications again were key. I won't list these individually, but these were the main target areas to get the message across. As I said, we had 6 weeks, so the council tax flyer was key because it hits every property, as were the bin hangers on the refuse bins. As per previous presentations, preempting complaints and having scripts ready for those that both the front-facing contact centre for us could use and the back office, the waste management officers that had the escalated complaints. So everybody's saying the same thing, and as mentioned, that avoids some of the formal complaints because there's no disparity in the information given, and the responses were well planned up front. So particularly on that last point. Okay. So to Jess now to tell you the trials and tribulations of the systems changes that we required. You can't see us, but Jess still has hair and lived to tell the tale, but this will hopefully help people a bit more.
Hi everyone. I may have hair, I don't know if I actually have my mental health intact after a 6-week lead-in. Our systems are very basic, so we use Capita Uniform as our waste management system, and our finance department use Capita. Unfortunately, when we were setting this up, neither of those two systems would talk to each other. They still don't. So that made it quite difficult. We set up an online form because we wanted to push people online as much as possible. We knew that our customer services teams wouldn't cope with everybody over the phone. So we use a CRM system, we use FirmStep, and we've got a good IT team who developed our forms. They then integrated simultaneously into our uniform system and into the Capita system. Initially, we were integrating at the first stage of the form because there was some restrictions on what Capita could do. So the resident would fill out the form to say that they wanted to pay for the garden waste, and the form would integrate to Uniform, and then the resident would be directed to the Capita portal to make payment, and then that would integrate into the finance system. What that did mean was sometimes if the internet failed or if the customer just changed their mind, they could complete the first stage and say they wanted to join the garden waste service and not make the payment. So we had a lot of requests in our system, excuse me, for people who had requested the service and the payment hadn't completed through. We thought that this would be easy to tie up because the two would always come one after each other, but with our percentage take up, there was thousands and thousands of them. Eventually, we did manage to change the system so that it integrated at the second stage, but with a 6-week lead-in, that took some time to complete. Also, initially, we had no way of putting direct debits into our system electronically. So when the first permits were sent out, we sent a direct debit form with them. They were posted back to us and they had to be manually input first into the finance system and then into our system. So everything had to be done twice. I think the first round we had about 15,000 direct debits that were being input manually. So it was a massive undertaking and obviously quite costly in terms of resource to do that. We've since moved along now with the Capita system. We're getting it to do more of what we need it to do, and our residents can electronically apply for a direct debit, which has made things really much better. The other thing to consider with your systems is your capacity. So obviously the telephone lines is an obvious one, but for us, our uniform system also had a set number of licenses, and every time we integrated it, it was using one of those licenses. So we had to be very careful and in the end do some work with iDocs on how we could make that so that it didn't cause us problems. Occasionally it would just freeze and integrate nothing because it felt like it was at its maximum. Throughout all this, we were reliant on key staff, especially from IT, who were versed in all the integration languages that they needed between all the different systems. We did consider just doing card payments and not bringing in direct debits because our pricing is quite low. It doesn't really lend itself to being a direct debit payment. We wouldn't take the money monthly. And one of the problems with direct debit is because it's such a small amount and because it's annually, people tend to forget what it is. The trouble with trying to do recurring card payments is that when the card numbers change, when a person's card gets replaced, we need those new details all over again, which can be a pain for the resident. But there's also issues with holding those card details in the capita system, which didn't help us to do that seamlessly. And obviously, as I said, we were not initially geared up to do direct debits electronically. But we did get to the bottom of that. And at the moment, I think we have 33,000 people and 20-odd thousand of them are on direct debit. So the pros and cons of the direct debit, obviously, once you set it up, that's really the end of it. Unless there's any issues from the resident, if they change banks or want to cancel, you don't ever have to touch it again, which makes it really good for the vast majority of people. Obviously, it automatically renews. If we didn't have the direct debits, on our stats, we would be expecting another 8,000 people phoning every year and another 14,000 people trying to pay by the website. The fact that we can remove all that traffic by providing direct debits is obviously really a useful thing for us. Our residents are used to direct debits, as I suppose most people are. A lot of people pay their council tax by direct debit. And we have it linked to a sort of my account system in our customer services. So then we have access to contact information. So we can send emails about the service, reminders that their direct debit is coming up and they don't need to do anything. So again, that's a good positive. There are some downsides. Works better if you have a fixed renewal date, which we do. I know some councils have dates renewing from when the person applied for the service. That would be really difficult to manage with direct debits. So we do have a fixed renewal date. As I've mentioned, we do have situations where a resident cancels the direct debit because they don't recognise it or they can't remember what it was for. And that does happen. We also have cancellations reported to individual service areas, which we need to tie together. So there can be a bit of chasing there. You do have to send formal notice to the residents if you change price. So if you are going to change the price every year, you do need to send them that information before the direct debit is collected. We used to send permits out before the payment was taken, and when we did that, PermiServ would include the direct debit letter for us, so they would get notification of the amount for that year. We've actually switched around the way that we do that now. We take the direct debit payment first and send the permit out after, but we get around the letter issue by sending out the price with council tax. So when we send out our council tax letters, anybody on direct debit also gets a letter to advise them what the price is going to be that year. Of course, if you don't change price, you don't need to do that. We do end up chasing debt if residents cancel the direct debit after we've sent out the permit, which can be a pain. But we have recently, actually this year, decided to change so that residents have to make a card payment first and then it will be moved on to a direct debit. We also have a tell us once form that our residents can use, which notifies us if someone at the property has died or moved away. But if someone goes directly to council tax to notify them of changes to occupancy, we unfortunately don't get that information. So there is a bit of a hole there where people can fall down.
Okay, so back to me, just to wrap up. So things we wouldn't do again if we could turn back time. We wouldn't post out stickers. We did it in year one, had blank stickers just printed. We had staff taking them home, getting relatives to help, and it was just an absolute nightmare and put a lot of pressure on people. So then the following year, from 2016-17, PermiServ had the solution for the print and pack, and we haven't looked back since from following that path. So again, that's a recommendation from us. Make sure your systems are integrated if you have got the time before you go live. It does make a massive difference just on the admin associated with those manual systems we highlighted at the beginning. And don't underestimate the amount of staff at your launch and your first renewal. By the time you get to year two, things are settled down. I think this echoes again previous presentations. And year three, it becomes a set piece, saying that we do find something every year that's a challenge to us, or changes that are coming, external influences. But generally by year three, things are settled. But certainly bank staff are drafted in for calls and to help with answering emails because of the amount of queries generated. And don't underestimate how many people will cancel their DDs in hour. That does happen. Again, and we have made a bit of an improvement for people to check that themselves, but with it being a relatively low amount, as Jess said, people do cancel them. I hope this facility will help people check before they do that, which generates admin or extra admin for resetting that up. So just a summary of where we started from and where we are now. So because we got quite a good take up when we implemented the scheme, we haven't really moved from that. So that tells us hopefully those people that wanted the service took the service and thought the price was right and have still retained it. The equivalent number of bins are there just for reference, what we're doing today versus 2016. And again, you'll see the price increases haven't been significant. Again, politically driven, that one. And the low council tax base, that's something that members have always wished to be the case. Tonnage reductions, again, not massive, a bit more now than when we started, but also noting that the garden service is seasonal and we're very rural. We did about 11,000 tonnes and now we're doing 8 to 9 depending on weather. So again, not a massive detriment to our recycling performance. I think somebody asked the question as well previously, did your quality improve? We take our waste to a local farm, so it's all a good news story. They invest that in compost on local fields, but they are very particular on contamination for that reason. And what we're seeing is those people using the service were putting the right stuff in the right bin, A, because perhaps that's what they wanted it for, but B, because the bin wouldn't be taken and rejected, and obviously they're paying for the service, so they want it to be right. So hopefully what we said will be of some use to people if they're thinking of going down the charging route, and we'll open it up to any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Jessica. Apologies for not introducing you there, Jessica. I didn't read my chair notes properly. I didn't scroll down. So my mistake. But anyway, a couple of questions just come in. First one from Barry. He asked, did you see a sort of relative uplift in garden waste to recycling centres, HWRCs, when charging commenced?
No, it's something that was monitored for that reason, to see if it was just being displaced, but no. And I think probably with the take up that we had, that was just telling for that reason. We were still taking it at the curbside and it wasn't being diverted.
Mm-hmm. And next one from an anonymous attendee asks, how many properties are eligible for your service?
We say 85%. We've got 52,000 properties in the borough, so that's I suppose do the math. 76%, so around 40,000. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And the question for Jessica, particularly about direct debits there. So how do you handle sort of communication and support for residents who have questions or concerns about their direct debit payments?
We have a list of frequently asked questions, which all of our contact centre use and our admin staff. And we obviously can direct people to the finance team if they want to speak specifically about the banking issues and various rules around direct debits. But actually we don't tend to get, I think people are used to direct debits these days, and we don't really tend to get a lot of inquiries. I think people do see it as the easy option. Just give us some bank details and we'll just do the hard work for you. So I think we've got a good take-up of direct debit. I think that's why.
And at one point, I thought, this is just my own observation from that, about the people potentially cancelling direct debits. Is that possible? Or is it like a yearly direct debit almost that you pay up front for the service? Or I know you mentioned it there, Darren, but in like a period of complaint or something, could they just cancel it and say, I'm not paying for this anymore?
Yeah, it's an annual payment, which is why we switched to taking the payment first, or the payments due on 1st of April, accounts reconcile that, and then 14 days later give us a list of paid people that have paid, all the transactions gone through. And yes, people see it later in the year and then it's cancelled. Obviously, if they're paid up front, that's fine, but then it's the admin next year, or they forgot, and then where's my sticker? Oh, you've cancelled your DD. So we have to go through the admin process of resetting that up. So that's a knock-on.
Okay, another one here from anonymous attendee again. They ask, do you have much of an uptake from flats, and how do you manage it? And are there any sort of common complaints, or who pays for the permit, whether it be residents or management companies or whatever?
Yeah, we do have uptake from management companies. We've got a few letting agents around the borough that put maybe 1 or 2 brown garden waste bins into their properties. Yeah, so it does happen. We don't tend to have obviously individual residents doing it, but we have in the past done invoices for the flat complexes to make their payments. And we sort of take them out of the normal payment method and treat them a little bit more individually, so that we can make sure that the bins go to the right places, because they're obviously not going to the places that are paying for them.
Okay, next question is from Christopher. He asks, did Council Tax Department provide any reason to why changes they have been notified cannot be shared with operational services like yourself?
Yeah, it's the usual GDPR question. We are pushing for a bit more clarification on that, and whether it is doable or whether it's just too hard. So, but the answer we've been given at the moment is GDPR.
And then just one more for myself before we round up, unless any more come in. Were there any sort of technical solutions needed or used to sort of streamline the direct debit process for the garden waste system?
Yeah, we needed a technical person in IT who knew what they were talking about.
Sure.
We have a bit of a wizard in IT who managed to make all that electronic for us, and who worked closely with Capita and our online firm step forms, and put all that together. It's all a bit of a mystery, and without him, we definitely it would have stayed manual, and that was, you know, very labour intensive.
Yeah, I'm sure. And just one question here from Shamina. She asks, can you kindly confirm what size garden waste bins are used at communal flat areas?
Yeah, it's 240s, and that's the same throughout. So anybody taking the garden waste service has a 240 bin.
Great. And I think that therefore rounds it up. I don't think I've missed anything. So thank you, Darren. Thank you, Jessica. Much appreciated. And we'll then move on to our next speaker. So our final speaker of the day is Dan Roberts. Dan Roberts is a waste and recycling specialist at WRAP. He's worked in the waste and recycling sector for more than 20 years. He's a chartered waste manager and fellow of the CIWM, and he has designed, implemented and managed a range of waste and recycling services and contracts. For his current role at WRAP, Dan engages extensively with local authorities, government and the wider resource sector, gathering evidence and formulating policy to drive forward the circular economy. So Dan, I will take myself away and then over to you.
Thank you, Josh. Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thank you, first of all, to Let's Recycle and PermiServ for inviting me here today and giving me the opportunity to wrap up and close this session. I'm going to focus, most of the presentation will be on sort of the wider view of garden waste. So looking at going back to some basic questions of why do we collect it? And by we, I mean the waste management sector and local government. Why do we collect it? What are the drivers that have made this service, and also what are the drivers going to be in the future for garden waste collections? A lot of what I'm going to talk about is very comparable and is broadly across the UK. There might be elements of legislation that apply to England only, so just something to be aware of. So hopefully this moves on. I appreciate there might be a little bit of a delay. I'm going to start off now with a poll, which Josh, hopefully you can bring up on the screen, please, and fingers crossed that this works. Brilliant. So for those councils on the call that charge for garden waste collection, or even if you're very close to implementing it, which of the following statements best describes how you calculated your collection charge? And you can only select one option. So which of the following statements most or best describes how you calculate your collection charge? Is it based on your local authority specific cost of garden waste collection, which might include admin and back office services? Is it based on the total cost of your garden waste service, including disposal? Is it based on wider waste service costs? So have you calculated as a figure broader cost for your waste service? Have you picked it based on, is it the same or similar to your neighbouring authorities? Have you looked at the national average and taken a view from there? Is it perhaps based on another requirement or an income generation target or something broader than your service? Anything else that's been missed? And please do pop it in the Q&A so we can have a look through that, hopefully, Josh. Or if you don't know or not sure, just, select don't know. So, yeah, please select one option, and really intrigued to have a look at the results. Josh will give me a shout when it's closed, and hopefully we can see those results on the screen.
Hopefully I can see it up. So I think everybody should be able to vote. With a bit of luck, that should come through. There we are. It's come off now. There we are.
Thanks, Josh. So interestingly, and this has been touched on by a few presenters, 38%, the highest one, similar charge to neighbouring authorities, and there's a political element to this there. The next highest 18% based on total cost of garden waste service, 16% based on cost of collection, and then a few others there. So it's really interesting to see what is driving how that charge is set. Brilliant. Thank you for that. I'm just going to close that. Don't know. Thank you, Josh. I have got a second screen, so apologies if I'm looking off screen. I'm trying to juggle two screens, and hopefully I don't move the slides on too quickly. So why do local authorities collect garden waste? We've heard lots today around implementing chargeable services and maximising participation. But taking this back as to where this came from, and I'm going to spend a few minutes on the next few slides looking at some of these in a bit more detail. So there's the legal requirement to collect garden waste, and that might include, we heard earlier about the instruction from a waste disposal authority. So actually it might be a requirement that you collect it, and you collect it in a certain way, and you keep it separate. It's also a significant proportion of the household waste stream. And whilst this might differ depending on your authority's context or your rurality and other aspects, it's a huge part of the waste stream. And in terms of local and national recycling targets, this is what's driven a lot of the capture, particularly of this heavy material, for a number of years. There's also this issue of resident demand. And it's interesting, having had the experience of implementing a universal garden waste service and a chargeable service, there's this question that perhaps as we start to implement chargeable services, that requirement from residents, that demand for quality potentially increases. And actually, these services have been in place for a long time. So moving from a universal service to a chargeable one, resident demand is something that absolutely has to be managed. From a treatment perspective, from a cost perspective, notwithstanding the cost of collection, it's pretty much always cheaper to treat garden waste, normally by open windrow composting or in-vessel composting, compared to dealing with it in residual waste, energy from waste or landfill. And fundamentally, and this is what really drove many of the services and the separate collection of garden waste, it's this environmental impact of organic material in landfill. And it's this one that I'd like to focus on first of all. Hopefully this slide's going to move on. It's this anaerobic degradation of the organic material in landfill that generates methane. And over 20 years, methane, it's an incredibly potent greenhouse gas, deemed 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So it's significant, and also we can have a significant impact on climate change and our emissions if we focus on methane. And it was this environmental imperative that was one of the driving forces behind the EU landfill directive. And at the time, this set some really significant targets to reduce by 2/3 the amount of biodegradable waste to landfill for member states by 2020 compared with 1995. So we kind of, it's interesting now reflecting on this as yet that target has been achieved, but these were really significant challenges for our sector over the last 25, 30 years. And coupled with complementary measures such as landfill tax in 1996, and other financial measures to move waste and biodegradable waste away from landfill. You can see there by that last bullet point on the slide on the right that it's a 75% reduction in methane emissions from the waste sector, the blue line there. So it's a significant contribution that's been made, and so much of that was driven by removing the biodegradable fraction at the curbside. So councils collecting garden waste and food waste and paper and card services. So it's just an interesting quick revisit for history. But it's important that we don't get complacent. And apologies, this isn't the clearest slide with the text, but what it's showing is the biodegradable municipal waste sent to landfill over the last few years. And if we focus at what we can see from 2010 is, yes, there has been across the board a reduction in the amount of biodegradable waste sent to landfill. But we can just see in 2021, and this is the latest information that we have figures for, these were published last June, it shows that slight uplift in how much biodegradable waste did go to landfill. And it's important to remember, we still have 111 councils who last year recorded sending municipal waste to landfill. So whilst its use has reduced and whilst biodegradable fraction to landfill has reduced, we can't get too complacent on this. This environmental impact and the challenges we have and the targets that we rightly have around net zero remain. So I just wanted to share that for a little bit of context of the current environmental position. And we also have the legal aspect. So as recently set out by DEFRA, it will become a legal requirement to collect garden waste when requested by householders by 31st of March 2026. Now, most councils, over 99% of councils, are already collecting garden waste. So from that perspective of compliance, councils are almost there. And DEFRA have also stated there'll be statutory guidance coming forward to detail what should be included within garden waste. Councils can continue to charge for garden waste in accordance with the Environmental Protection Act and the Controlled Waste regulations. And again, DEFRA set out recently, and this is subject to consultation that closed in November, and we're awaiting the details from this, that a co-collection of food and garden waste will be permitted without the need for a written assessment, which was originally envisaged. So again, this is subject to consultation. This is not the case yet. Where it is co-collected, DEFRA are clear that food waste must be collected free of charge and it must be collected at least weekly. So we have this legal aspect of collection that needs to be considered also. And I've mentioned about waste composition and how much garden waste makes up in the waste stream. And the figures here are the result of some work RAP did in 2017. It was a synthesis of waste composition studies. And we can see garden waste in this instance, 17.2%. It's roughly the second most biggest waste stream by weight of material. And this is based on all material at the curbside. This isn't just what's in the residual fraction, the recycling fraction. This is for everything. And this will differ for councils depending on aspects such as where your authority is or the rurality, the levels of deprivation, the materials you collect, the frequency of your collections, and even seasonality. Those that have done waste composition studies know how much this can differ across authorities. But there's a considerable amount of garden waste, and irrespective of of universal services or chargeable services, we still do have garden waste in the residual stream. And I think it's important. That something we all want to do is drive that garden waste out of the residual stream and into where it can have most benefits. In terms of the cost of treatment and disposal of garden waste, the figures from Let's Recycle show that open windrow composting gate fee range last year, it's broadly around the £25 to £30 per tonne mark. And if we look at the results of the last year's gate fee survey in the tables here with the figures circled in red, that's significantly less than treating garden waste through the usual residual waste routes of energy from waste and landfill. So for energy from waste last year, we see a median average of £103 per tonne. For landfill, and that's exclusive of landfill tax at £28 a tonne. Once we factor in the landfill tax at the time, we're looking at £126, £127 per tonne. So as I mentioned, there is a collection element to this, but where you have garden waste collections in place, obviously it's really important to maximise the efficiency of those in terms of, to get that garden waste yield out of the residual stream for many other reasons, but financially it's an incredibly important part of the service. This is an opportunity as well for a quick plug for the gate fee survey. Those of you might have had reminder emails. The deadline is today for your submissions for the gate fee survey. I can exclusively reveal here that if you do submit it tomorrow or Friday, it will still be counted. So if you haven't done so already, or you're not involved in the gate fee, please speak to colleagues. We really need your data to help us in our work and to deliver this on your behalf. So a quick plug from me. So those are some of almost the scene setting, the context of why we collect garden waste. I wanted to share some current insights, and this comes with a big health warning. This information is taken from the RAP LA portal, and I'm really conscious that it's the annual review time. So again, many of you might be responsible for this in your authority. We're asking authorities to update the information in the portal for purposes such as this, so we can relay what's going on and share this back with you all. So these figures are liable to change as the review takes place during January. But this is what we know now, and this is based on some first attempts at the data. 72% of councils in England are charging for garden waste collection. And if we look at this on a per wheeled bin perspective, so this is excluding services that might provide reusable bags or single-use sacks, because that might be a cost per sack basis. So just as a broad comparison to make this fair, the average subscription charge is around £51 per subscription, per bin. The range is around £25 to £89. And the reason I say around, again, is that we've heard today from presenters, some of the charges will incorporate a delivery charge, or there might be other aspects for multiple bins where there might be concessions. Again, this is taken broadly for each service type for a wheel bin. And when we look at subscription rates, we're looking at about a 1 in 3 subscription rates for eligible residents that sign up to a service where a charge is implemented. And again, how local authorities determine a subscription rate. Are you using as the denominator all properties in your area? Is it just eligible properties? In the example we heard earlier from Highland, if there's only 70,000 properties eligible for the service, is that where the denominator is being set to gauge the true subscription rate? But what we've also seen, and the last 2 bullet points, this is focused on work RAP did around 5 years ago, where garden waste charges are implemented. Generally speaking, we see a reduction of around 25% in the yields compared to a free of charge service. And also when comparing local authorities that charge for garden waste against those that don't, typically we think it accounts for around a 5.9 percentage point reduction in the total recycling rate. But it is worth pointing out on this that there's other factors at play there. Garden waste isn't the sole driver of the recycling rate, your national indicator 192. It might depend on other aspects of the service and other facets such as residual frequency, containment aspects, and parts like that. So health warning with the data, but it's often something that's discussed amongst local authorities. We get a lot of queries. What is the current status with? So hopefully that does help out with that side of things. looking at future considerations. So again, today has been some really good. It's really good to hear some of the insights around implementing chargeable services, and it certainly chimed and brought back memories for me, having dealt with these services previously. But I wanted just to touch on a slide or two around what are the future targets and the future considerations that are going to implement your services, and how will this impact garden waste collections. So first of all, we have targets set out in the circular economy package and the resources and waste strategy. A government target to send no more than 10% of municipal waste to landfill by 2035. And then we also have some complementary targets here around this target in the environmental improvement plan to halve residual waste by 2042. And there's an interim target set for 2028. Now, again, garden waste in the residual stream, we hear it's there, we hear it's a challenge. We have to think, how do we focus on getting that material out? We've heard examples today, and it's something I'm going to touch on shortly, that this is where hopefully we're looking to the sector to come together to focus on this, because we do need to reduce residual as well as diverting that material away from residual, focusing on the 65% municipal waste recycling rate. If that's material for garden waste that isn't being captured, it's heavy stuff. We need to get it where it needs to go. There's also the call for evidence from May last year that DEFRA issued on this near elimination of biodegradable waste to landfill from 2028. So that's not long to go. And in the call for evidence, DEFRA acknowledge there's a significant amount of this material still going to landfill. And we know 111 councils are still delivering it there. So this is coming down the road very soon. And as well as targets that focus on the tonnage, there is this question of material quality that is absolutely vital. If we're going to support the composting sector, if we're going to ensure the integrity of the sector to make sure that actually we have outlets for the material that we need to collect, it's really important that we work with operators and we recognise the challenges they face. So we have the impact on standard rules permits. Many of you using open windrow composting, those operators will be operating in accordance with standard rules permits, which set targets for contamination typically of under 1%. The PAS 100 contamination limit, so that the PAS 100 standard for compost outputs sets a 0.25% limit for contamination and a subcategory of 0.12% for plastic. So as we strive for quality, and this is being reviewed as part of quality protocols, it's really important that we ensure that we're protecting the integrity of this material and the sites, because if there are impacts on sites, if they cannot operate, or if the costs of them operating are such that gate fees have to increase, clearly that's going to be felt through the chain. So material quality is something that we absolutely need to keep in focus. And also from the perspective of your services, it's this impact on the other options for garden waste disposal. So how are changes around household waste recycling centres, reconfiguration to accept more material, reuse, dealing with POPs on site and bulky waste, these are all going to have potential impacts on how garden waste can be managed. And how do changes to your residual waste collections, your frequencies, your capacity? We heard the example of moving to 180 litre bins, and the hope that will squeeze that capacity and mean that garden waste, there isn't the room for it there in the bin. So these are just aspects that we need to keep in mind that are going to drive, hopefully, garden waste out of residual waste in future. And this is very much on DEFRA's radar, and the quote that you see there is from the response to the consultation on simpler recycling. And DEFRA stating, continue to monitor garden waste recycling rates and to look for evidence to see how it can minimise that material that isn't ending up, to make sure it's not ending up in the residual waste stream. So that's the collective aim, really, that we need to focus on. And it's to that end that I'd like to introduce something some of you might be aware of, which is non-statutory guidance. And for those that haven't come across this previously, there's another quote there from DEFRA in the simpler recycling consultation. Non-statutory guidance is, as it suggests, it's not a legal requirement, but it's information and supporting documents that hopefully can help influence and support the sector. So it's guidance that we're looking to develop on a range of different materials within RAP. And we're engaging with organisations such as the Waste Network Chairs. And for those not familiar with them, that's where the collective local authority waste networks such as LARAC and Nordo, ADEPT, district council networks, DCN, and other organisations. That's where they've come together, and we're talking to them as RAP to say, well, what will be of interest to your members? For local authorities on this call, what is it that you want to see in non-statutory guidance? And this is talking around what are the principles of what good practice looks like? What evidence can we as RAP help generate to help you in your work, in your operations, in your policies, in your engagement with members? And the purpose really, and it's been this webinar is a brilliant example of this. How do we ensure that good operational learning is shared? So this is where we're moving towards with some non-statutory guidance, and it leads us on, hopefully, Josh, to our second poll. And I'll give that a moment, hopefully, to appear on the screen.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Thanks, Josh. This is the last I'll be asking of you, so it's the second and final poll. You'll be pleased to know.
There we go. It should pop up in a second. Is there like a next slide? Would that help? Next slide button.
I'll move it on and see if no.
Okay. Our tech team. Oh, there we go.
Brilliant. Thank you, Josh. So if RAP were to produce non-statutory guidance for local authorities on garden waste collections, what would you like to see included? And for this one, it's multiple choice. Please select all the boxes. So would you like to see information, data and insights on how to maximize garden waste yields? What about data or insights on the operational factors, the frequency of collections, the impact of seasonality, restricted collections, the containers issued, the size of the containers, any terms and conditions? What about data or insights on the impact of charging and the impact it can have on your service? Material quality, reprocessing contracts. So again, anything around standardization of contracts that you have. Communication, that could be communication with the public, it could be communication with your crews, the people on the front line of this service. Is there any guidance that can help there? Compliance and enforcement. How do we get people to use the bins as they should? Anything on home composting, any best practice or other, please let us know in chat. So yeah, please do select all those that apply. And whilst you're having a think on that, it's just important for non-statutory guidance. The purpose is that it will be useful to you. That's why it's being developed, and that's why we're at pains to work with the local authority networks to make sure we can do that. So we'll give you a moment longer, and then we'll see where your priorities lie. Thanks, Josh. Brilliant. So some really good numbers coming through. Excuse me, I'm just going to have to scroll down. Hopefully don't click the slide on. So it looks like, yeah, communication, 79%. And I'm assuming that is mainly communication with residents. And if not, if there's anything else, please do pop it in the Q&A box. Best practice case studies next, I think, on 71%. Data and insights on operational factors is coming through. In fact, all of them, yeah, coming through quite strongly. So thank you ever so much for that. It's if there's anything that we've missed off there as something you think is really lacking or missing or we haven't covered, you will have chance to comment on this through your representative local authority waste network. So thank you, Josh, and thank you all very much for that. Final couple of slides from me, and then happy to take some questions. Just a quick plug. I've mentioned the local authority portal already, and I've put the website up there. Email reminders have gone out. Please do review your authority details by the end of January. That portal is really, really useful for us with our work in terms of, well, for presentations such as this, but helping us develop guidance, develop statistical evidence to support your services. We need to understand the nuances of your service. Chargeable garden waste collection services. As we've seen, there are different ways of defining aspects such as subscription rates. If you have more than one service operating, perhaps for flats, perhaps single-use bags and bins, we'd love to hear about it in as much detail as you can provide. So I won't labour that any further. The details are there, including the email address if you need to contact us. I understand the slides are being shared shortly, so you'll have that contact detail in the slide deck too. Oops, sorry, I'm just going to go back one slide very quickly. And finally, a plug for our local authority team webinar, which is in a couple of weeks' time on food waste collections. So really timely at the moment with all the changes that are coming around food waste collections. Please do register your interest and join that webinar in 2 weeks' time. If you go on the WRAP website or search for local authority webinars in all good web searches, that information will be available. So please do join us for that. And that's everything I wanted to cover today. Thank you again so much for the opportunity to talk today. Thank you for those who've attended. I'll pass back to Josh and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dan. So yeah, brings us to the end of the speakers, but we do have a Q&A here for Dan with some questions there. So any final ones, do pop them in. So first one I think is worth mentioning here, Dan, was a comment from John. I think earlier in the slide it mentioned about legal requirements. I know you touched upon it later, but perhaps it's best to just sort of confirm this point. He says, I'm not sure garden waste is a legal requirement as it's a non-mandatory service. I think in one of the slides it mentioned legal requirements. I thought I'd give you a right to reply if you like on that.
Yeah, sure, no problem, John. At present, the Environment Act, I think Section 57, sets out that garden waste for local authorities will be prescribed as a recyclable waste stream. So there will be a requirement for local authorities to provide a collection of garden waste when the statutory instruments are made. Which again, this forms part of DEFRA's process of the consultations they've had. So when that requirement takes effect, local authorities will have to provide a garden waste collection, but it's upon request from the householder. So where the other prescribed materials such as paper, metals, plastics are required, the garden waste one only becomes a requirement when the household or the resident requires it. So that is what is coming in the near future when I refer to that. So yeah, Section 57 of the Environment Act, it will make amendments to Section 45 of the Environmental Protection Act. It will be a requirement, but upon request from the householder.
Great, thanks for clarifying that, Dan. Next one up here is from Barry. He asked that if garden waste is currently collected free of charge, are we able to introduce charging in the near future?
Yeah, so the consultations that DEFRA issued in 2019 and 2021 on consistency, they proposed the idea that garden waste collections would have to be required free of charge at no additional cost. That requirement will not be continuing. So there are still local authorities are still able to levy a charge for collection only. So the Environmental Protection Act, again, Section 45, I think it's subsection 3, and the Controlled Waste Regulations 2012 set out this in a little bit more detail, Barry. But yeah, effectively, local authorities can charge for the collection of garden waste as part of that, and that will be permitted in the future.
Great. Next one is from an anonymous attendee. They say it's a difficult call, but where do councils gain money without charging for garden waste?
Yeah, it's more of a statement, Josh, but yeah, happy to take that. And having spent 16 years in local government, I can understand that with the pressures of local authority finance. And I think this is where we're seeing now that there's a significant number of authorities do now charge. It's the majority of authorities providing the service do charge for garden waste. I think the emphasis needs to be that the drivers that made sure that we removed garden waste as a stream from residual waste, those drivers remain and will actually almost heighten. Some of them become exacerbated in the future as we need to meet further targets. So I think whether or not it's free of charge garden or chargeable garden services, it's about making sure that we're capturing the right quality and quantity of garden waste and making sure it's being used in the most appropriate way. I think that's the crucial part that I'd like to get across.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and just a couple more then. One from me here, which is, in your experience working with local authorities sort of across the UK, can you highlight any sort of successful strategies or best practices that have enhanced garden waste management on a sort of larger scale?
I suppose I'd say watch this space, Josh, in terms of non-statutory guidance. Those are examples that we're keen to highlight. I think I think like many aspects of services, it's where you have high quality services with clear communication plans and very consistent policies. We've heard from a lot of presenters today about setting out, having complaints procedures, operational policies in advance. Clearly, there's a lot that we can learn from all the authorities that are providing these services and are capturing really high levels of garden waste yield. I suppose, as well as offering a comprehensive service, it's important it's well complemented. So again, ensuring that actually your frequencies and your containment of all your waste streams complement one another. So you're setting a service out in such a way that you're capturing the material in the right way. But we're keen to speak to local authorities and capture information via all the means we can, so that we can actually report back which authorities are seeing success in this space, and what learnings can we share with that. So yeah, watch this space. That's hopefully going to be a big part of the non-statutory guidance.
Great. Well, thank you, Dan. Which brings us to the end. Before we go, I think Louise is going to come and just say some sort of final remarks. But a huge thank you to our speakers this afternoon, and of course this morning as well. Big thank you to everybody. And I'd just like to invite Louise on to say a few final words before we head off.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Josh. Yeah, it's just quickly just to say really thank you so much to everyone for attending. Thanks for all our speakers. Thank you, Let's Recycle, for helping manage this event and hosting it today. And I hope that you've taken away as much as humanly possible about running this service. Obviously, get in touch if you've got any questions to councils or indeed to Whitespace or PermiServ. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. So thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of your day.
Brilliant. Thank you, Louise. Which only leads me to say thank you once more. Just a reminder, the slides and recordings will be sent out tomorrow. So that should be with you then. And yeah, big thanks everybody, and have a good and rest of the day. Bye-bye.